A very good evening and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to another session on internal security. Yesterday, we were dealing with the chapter on terrorism. Right now, we have covered many key topics under terrorism. We have discussed some basic concepts. We have covered the Khalistan movement in complete detail. Today, we will be taking up insurgency and terrorism that we have witnessed in Jammu and Kashmir. We will specifically talk about Kashmir insurgency and terrorism, the separatist movement that has been seen in J&K. We'll understand the role of Pakistan in sponsoring the Kashmir separatist movement. We'll also discuss the pan-India terrorism that we have seen across Indian cities against India's civilian population. We will be talking about the measures India has taken to counter terrorism, including the legal measures and the security intelligence measures to tackle the threat of terrorism. So we have many important and very interesting topics lined up for today. So without wasting any time, let's start with Jammu and Kashmir insurgency and cross-border terrorism. See, J&K has been a source of dispute between India and Pakistan since 1947. In 1947, when India and Pakistan were born, when they gained independence from British rule, the then ruler of J&K, Raja Hari Singh, because I hope you know that J&K was a princely state under British rule. So when India and Pakistan were given independence in 1947, the princely states were given the option to either join India or join Pakistan or remain independent. This provision was provided under the Indian Independence Act that provided independence for the dominion of India and the dominion of Pakistan. So Raja Hari Singh, the then Dogra ruler of J&K, he opted to remain independent initially. Is that clear? He neither wanted to join India nor Pakistan. So technically, J&K was an independent state of its own, as Raja Hari Singh, the ruler of Jammu and Kashmir, had opted to remain independent. But then, Pakistan laid its eyes on Kashmir. Pakistan made an illegal attempt to capture Kashmir for itself and sponsored an invasion of Jammu and Kashmir. This began the Kashmir dispute, where Pakistan would go on to illegally occupy parts of J&K. And as a result, Raja Hari Singh merged Jammu and Kashmir with India in return for India's support to fight back against the Pakistani aggression. Raja Hari Singh approached India for help, but India's condition was Jammu and Kashmir should accede to India. So since Raja Hari Singh had no further options, he signed the instrument of accession, thus formally merging Jammu and Kashmir into the Indian Union. So the whole state of J&K as it existed in 1947 would belong to India. But Pakistan by then had occupied large territories of Jammu and Kashmir, which remains under the illegal occupation of Pakistan. So we call these territories as POK, Pakistan Occupied Kashmir. So this is what led to the first India-Pakistan war in 1947 over the Kashmir issue. Later, Pakistan made a second attempt in 1965, again to capture Kashmir, that triggered the second India-Pakistan war. So basically, from 1950s and all the way till 1980s, Pakistan was obsessed with Kashmir. Pakistan had made it a top priority to capture Kashmir for itself and to keep destabilizing Kashmir to threaten Indian interests. But however, Kashmir as such didn't witness any local insurgency or separatist movement during this period. From 1950s till 1980s. During this period, we did not see any major separatist activity, any insurgent terrorist activity by the local Kashmiris. The part of J&K which was with India, right, that is the region or across the LOC, across the line of control, it firmly remained under India's control, and the Indian administration had managed to keep the people satisfied. So locally, there wasn't any such strong demand as such for breaking Kashmir away from India. Pakistan kept making attempts repeatedly, right? It even went to war with India again in 1965. It was looking for opportunities to try and destabilize Kashmir and try to break Kashmir away from India. But locally, we didn't see any major separatist terrorist movement during this period. The people had largely put their faith in India, in the Constitution of India, and the Constitution of India had guaranteed special status to Jammu and Kashmir under Article 370 and Article 35A to protect the rights and resources of the people of J&K. This special status had been added in the Indian Constitution because J&K had joined India under very difficult circumstances. So as a result, there was hope in J&K that the state will develop, it will progress along with the rest of the country. But unfortunately, due to the security threats and challenges being posed by Pakistan, India mainly focused on militarization of Jammu and Kashmir. As a result, development and good governance was compromised. The top priority for the Indian government was to keep J&K firmly under Indian control. This was primarily because of what Pakistan was doing. Pakistan's constant obsession and constant meddling in Kashmir, right? It was trying to trigger a separatist movement. It was looking for opportunities to destabilize Kashmir. So this led India to focus excessively on militarizing the region. And this started breeding discontent amongst the local people. Of course, there were some elements, some extremists in Kashmir who were looking to align with Pakistan. So this was an opportunity for them. It was an opportunity to breed more resentment and create a divide between the Indian state and the people of Kashmir. So over these 3 decades, the excessive militarization of J&K had affected the rights of the people. The deployment of troops and the curbing of basic rights, such as right to press, right to movement, these basic rights were constantly curbed due to the security threats. And this had led to discontent and resentment at the local level, and even development and welfare to an extent was being neglected and compromised. And within the state, at the level of the state government, there was maladministration. There was maladministration. There was allegedly corruption and dynastic politics, where one party and one family kept ruling Jammu and Kashmir with the support of the government of India. The Indian government had placed more faith in one party, that is the National Conference, as National Conference had played an important role in keeping J&K firmly united with India. Under the leadership of Sheikh Abdullah played a very important role in convincing the people of Kashmir that they had a better future with India than with Pakistan back in 1947-48. He would later become the leader of J&K as well. And India came to rely heavily on the Abdullah family and the National Conference to maintain stability in Kashmir. So this over-reliance on one party and one family gave rise to an assumption amongst the people that this was a corrupt government, there was maladministration at the state level, and there was dynastic politics. So people were looking for a change. Because due to lack of development, excessive militarization, and the domination of one single regional party, the Kashmiri youth, the Kashmiri youth was starting to get frustrated. And this was showing up in the social tensions that had started to rise by 1980s. Is that clear? So in general, there was widespread resentment that was starting to grow at the ground level, especially amongst the younger population. So at this point in 1987, Kashmir was slated to head towards elections. J&K was headed towards state elections. And it was widely expected that the National Conference would be defeated in this election. Since the people were unhappy, right, and they wanted a change in government, it was widely expected that the National Conference would be defeated and Abdullah family would be removed from power. But contrary to these expectations, a rumor started circulating, an allegation started circulating that the Indian government was rigging the election, was manipulating the election to favor the National Conference and the Abdullah family. See, these allegations have remained unsubstantiated till date. These are not proven allegations. But a strong rumor started spreading by 1987 in the run up to the state elections that the Indian government was favoring just one party, just to keep the state under control, right? Just to maintain India's sovereignty. And it was alleged that India was looking to manipulate and meddle with the elections. Now, this was a serious allegation, correct? Because a democratic government meddling with elections at the state level to favor few parties is a very serious accusation. As I told you, it was largely a rumor, never been confirmed conclusively. But this rumor was sufficient to add fuel to the fire. The initial fires had already started. By 1980s, the resentment was growing. Pakistan was also adding to the separatist tendencies that was growing. And along with that, when the rumor spread that India was manipulating the state elections, it immediately became a trigger that led to the breakout of a violent separatist movement. Immediately, a violent separatist movement broke out that was primarily led by the Kashmiri youth. Several radical groups propped up immediately, declaring a war against the Indian state, calling for separating Kashmir from India. It was a war for independence, very similar to various insurgencies that we have seen in northeast India. It was essentially a separatist movement where a call was given for an armed rebellion to break Kashmir away from India. So the rumor that India was manipulating the election served as the immediate trigger for the breakout of large-scale violence. By 1988, 1989, we saw the birth of a militant insurgent movement which would be directly supported and nurtured by Pakistan's ISI. Pakistan was waiting for such an opportunity in Kashmir. By this time, as we studied yesterday, it was already involved in destabilizing Punjab by backing the Khalistan movement. Correct? By mid-1980s, the Khalistan movement was already raging. It had already become a security nightmare for India. So Pakistan was already waging one covert war against India. At the right time, another perfect opportunity opened up for Pakistan as soon as the separatist movement broke out in Kashmir. So immediately, Pakistan's ISI and the Pakistani army, they created the required support and infrastructure to back these separatist rebel groups and turned this into a violent insurgency and introduced terrorism as well in Jammu and Kashmir. Is that clear? Pakistan would provide direct assistance and sponsorship to the separatist movement that was breaking out, which was initially led by local Kashmiri youth. They were natives of Kashmir, Indian citizens essentially. These separatist leaders, they would be sheltered in POK across the line of control in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. The ISI would provide all the support needed, funds, weapons, training, safe sanctuaries where they could hide. And from there, they could launch their operations into Kashmir against India. Pakistan wouldn't stop here because Pakistan's prime obsession has always been Kashmir since 1947. Just providing some support to the terror movement wouldn't be enough. Pakistan went the extra mile. It took the extra step to even introduce Mujahideen fighters from Afghanistan into the Kashmir conflict. The Mujahideen fighters in Afghanistan who were close to the ISI were diverted towards Kashmir. Because by 1988, 1999, Afghan Mujahideen was relatively free. The Soviet forces were retreating in Afghanistan. Soviet forces had been defeated by the Afghan Mujahideen. And these Mujahideen forces which comprised of Afghan and Pakistani citizens who were terrorists, they were conveniently diverted by the ISI towards Kashmir to make this into a religious war, to give that religious angle and turn this into a religious conflict against India. Initially, when the separatist movement broke out, right, the communal angle was not the focus. It was just another separatist movement. Just like Khalistanis were demanding a separate state, Northeast insurgents were demanding a separate state. Similarly, a separatist movement had started, right? And this is something India could have contained as well. But as Pakistan stepped in and gave direct sponsorship to the separatists and started hosting them, started giving them complete support in POK, it created a safe haven for the separatist outfits, gave them all the funds, the weapons, and the training, and tried escalating this movement against India. Along with backing the separatists, it started introducing Mujahideen fighters from Afghanistan, right, who are more hardcore terrorists. The Afghan Mujahideen, which had been fighting in Afghanistan for more than a decade, was a heavily radicalized set of terror outfit. These terrorists from Afghanistan were diverted towards the Kashmir theater to try and introduce a more radical strand of religious extremism. And parallelly, it created several dedicated Kashmir-centric terror groups. Kashmir-centric anti-India terror groups were created in the late 80s and early 90s. Is that clear? Apart from the local separatist outfits of J&K, and apart from introducing the Mujahideen fighters, Pakistan would set up new terrorist organizations. The ISI and the army, they would play a direct role in raising new terrorist outfits by using some of the Kashmiri separatist leaders. So terror groups such as Hizbul Mujahideen, Harkatul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Toiba, Al-Badr, and other such notorious groups were formed in late 80s and early 90s. Later, in 99-2000, Jaish-e-Mohammed was also established after Masood Azhar was released from Indian custody following the hijacking of IC-814 aircraft. So during these 2 decades, from mid-80s to late 90s, Pakistan created an entire terror ecosystem with special focus on Jammu and Kashmir. Right? It went that extra mile to completely destabilize J&K and started backing large-scale infiltration from across the line of control. It would give direct support to cross-border terrorism. It would not only shelter these terrorists and give them all the required support, it would enable them to cross the line of control into India and launch their attacks against India. Right? This is something Pakistan continues to do even today. Even today, Pakistan enables these terrorists to cross over from across the LOC into India and launch their attacks in India. The Pakistani army and its border guarding force, which are deployed along the LOC, they deliberately open fire at Indian positions against Indian army and BSF positions to distract them. And by using this cover, the terrorists will sneak into India across the LOC. Especially during night time, during the cover of the dark, Pakistan will deliberately open fire against Indian positions. It will break the ceasefire. We actually have a ceasefire agreement in place. Both sides are supposed to maintain a ceasefire. But Pakistan deliberately violates the ceasefire and tries to distract the Indian troops so that the terrorists can use the opportunity to sneak into India. It has even built tunnels, underground tunnels across the LOC so that the terrorists can sneak across and engage in this cross-border terrorism. Meaning the terrorists are coming from across the border, right? So it's the presence of these terror sanctuaries in Pakistan which is the biggest challenge for India. We discussed yesterday how the Khalistan outfits were sheltered, how the Khalistani leaders were given complete support and a base in Pakistan. Similarly, Kashmiri separatists and dedicated Kashmir-centric terror groups were sheltered in Pakistan, and they were connected with other deadly outfits from Afghanistan as well. From Afghanistan, the Taliban, Al Qaeda, and factions of Taliban like the Haqqani network, these notorious terror groups that were also operating along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, they were connected with anti-India terrorist outfits by Pakistan. Anti-India terror groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba and later Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbul Mujahideen, all these groups would start working closely with the Afghan-based terror outfits, including the Afghan Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and the Haqqani network. So these interconnections were all formed by Pakistan. Pakistan would give this kind of support to these terrorists to escalate the violence in Kashmir. So this was a brutal decade for J&K. The late 80s and early 90s and all the way till early 2000, those 15 to 18 years, and almost until 2003, it was a very dangerous period in the history of Kashmir. This is where we witnessed the peak militancy. This is where we witnessed the peak of terror attacks in late 80s and throughout 90s and going all the way till 2003. So for a good 15, 18 years, right, Pakistan kept pumping funds and arms and all the support needed to these terror organizations and created an entire ecosystem in Pakistan and in POK to wage this war against India. So this became the second major covert proxy war of Pakistan against India. Its goal was to ensure that Kashmir is liberated from India with the ambition of capturing Kashmir for itself. So Pakistan not only focused on destabilizing Kashmir, but it wanted to ensure that the Kashmir issue reverberates and has an impact across India. Because remember, Pakistan had sworn revenge against India in the 1970s for India's role in liberating Bangladesh. It was waiting for opportunities to exploit our internal divides. And India's biggest internal divide was our communal divide, the Hindu-Muslim divide. So Pakistan realized that Kashmir gave an opportunity to bring that communal angle, the religious angle into the conflict, to drive a wedge between Hindus and Muslims and make the Kashmir conflict essentially a Muslim conflict. So Pakistan ensured this by using Mujahideen fighters from Afghanistan and the other terror groups that it had created and used them to target religious minorities in Kashmir, that is the Kashmiri Pandits. In the late 80s, Kashmiri Pandits were specifically targeted in an ethnic cleansing attempt to wipe out the entire ethnic group from the state. Several targeted killings took place where Kashmiri Pandits were targeted by the terror groups, and a call was given asking the Pandits to leave the Kashmir Valley or else the community would be wiped out. Under this threat, the Kashmiri Pandits got displaced. They had to give up everything they owned, abandon their houses, their property, their jobs, and they had to move out of the region and settle in other parts of the country. So this was a human tragedy that happened. The then governments failed to prevent the crisis. J&K back then was under governor's rule, and even the central government was a coalition government, right? All the parties which were part of the coalition, they wouldn't act enough, and they failed to protect the Kashmiri Pandits from this targeted violence against them. See, I know it's a very delicate, controversial topic of late, right? These topics have become extremely sensitive. There are theories suggesting it was a genocide against Kashmiri Pandits. Let me clarify this. See, a genocide is where millions and lakhs of people are slaughtered and where there is state support, like what happened with the Jews under Nazi Germany, under Adolf Hitler. That is a genocide, right? In a way, what East Pakistan, what the Pakistani army did in East Pakistan against Bengalis, that was a genocide where lakhs and millions were slaughtered, right? Even to an extent, the targeted violence against Rohingyas by the Myanmar army, even that qualifies to be called a genocide. But in the case of Kashmiri Pandits, Yes, brutal atrocities happened. There were targeted killings. Several Pandits were killed as well. But the death or the killings were not in the scale of thousands or lakhs or millions. So technically, it would be incorrect to call it a genocide. I'm not undermining the suffering of the Pandits. This was a human tragedy. They got displaced. It was an ethnic cleansing attempt. It was an attempt to wipe out the ethnic group. But it would be wrong to call it a genocide. That's the clarification I'm giving you. Because I've seen many students getting influenced by all the propaganda outside and believing that it was a genocide, not knowing what exactly is a genocide. And there was no state support here, right? It's not that the Indian state carried this out. It was the terrorists pushed by Pakistan who were directed by Pakistan to target the Pandits. Because Pakistan knew what would be the reaction for this. That's exactly what Pakistan wanted. Pakistan's focus was not just on Kashmir right now. It was on dividing India, ensuring that the Kashmir issue reverberates across the country on communal lines. Now, this is the biggest success of Pakistan's covert war against India. Now, you tell me, in your family, let's say you discuss the Kashmir issue with them and the Northeast issue with them. Which issue do you think your family members will connect with? Right? Which issue do you think your family members will know more about? And which issue do you think they'll connect more, where they'll have a strong opinion on it? I'm 100% sure it will be the Kashmir issue and not the Northeast issues. Majority of the Indians have bare minimum knowledge about the Northeast of India. They can't even name the number of states and all the states that are there. I can guarantee this. The reason why there is more awareness about Kashmir and a greater connection with the Kashmir issue across India is because a communal angle was added to the conflict. This was Pakistan's game plan. This was Pakistan's strategy to sabotage India and to subvert Indian interests. It would use terrorist organizations to target religious minorities. And Pakistan knew exactly what would be the reaction. The reaction would also be on communal lines. Because see, Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmiri Muslims, they have lived in communal harmony for many centuries. Since centuries, the Pandits have inhabited the valley with Kashmiri Muslims. They used to share a great bond with each other. Right? The region has seen great deal of communal harmony over the centuries. But this was disrupted. Yes, Kashmiri Muslims were also radicalized by introducing the Mujahideen fighters, the Afghan Mujahideen ideology, radical Wahhabism, Salafism, and by indoctrinating the Kashmiri youth, and then using the terrorists to target the religious minorities. This was a planned attempt, a deliberate attempt to add a communal angle into this conflict and to turn the Kashmir issue into a Hindu-Muslim issue. To begin with, the Kashmir issue was not a Hindu-Muslim issue, right? It was a territorial dispute, just like any other insurgent separatist movement we have seen. Is that clear? We have seen many such insurgent movements in the northeast of India. The religious color, right, which was added by Pakistan, would widen the impact of the Kashmir dispute. Now, that's why even one attack in Kashmir has a huge impact across the country. It gets wide coverage. People associate with it. As minority Hindus were targeted by radical terror groups, it gets converted into a Hindu-Muslim issue essentially, right? Even though it should have been just another separatist movement. The same happened with Khalistan movement. Khalistan movement was supposed to be another separatist movement, but the religious angle, right, the connection with Sikh extremists is what brings that communal angle into the Khalistan movement. So this was a game plan of Pakistan to use these terrorists from Afghanistan and Pakistan and bring that religious radicalism, right? Bring radical Wahhabism, Salafism to Kashmir. Use the terrorists to target the minorities. And automatically this would divide the country on communal lines. So even today, Kashmir issue is seen with the communal lens across India, right? And that weakens our society, that weakens the Indian state. And this is the success of Pakistan's covert war against India. So every time you fall prey to this propaganda, please remember you're aiding Pakistan's strategy. Unfortunately, several organizations in India, several political parties in India, even they have politicized the issue. The bottom line here is that this is an external covert war, right? There is an external enemy backing this movement, supporting this movement constantly. This movement definitely threatens our integrity and sovereignty, but this need not be a communal conflict, right? But unfortunately, that is how politics works. And right now, the Kashmir issue is definitely seen through the communal color. There is a communal angle attached to it. So, what happened with the Pandits was a extremely unfortunate humanitarian tragedy, and the governments failed to prevent from this happening. So, Kashmiri Pandits got displaced. They became internally displaced. Many moved out and settled in Punjab and in Delhi. Some of them moved abroad, right? So, very few Pandits remain back in Kashmir. Of late, some of them have started going back, but very few Pandits remain because for them, it was a final call that was given by the terrorists. Initially, they began a wave of targeted attacks. Several Kashmiri Pandits and their families were killed just because of their religion. And then open calls were issued. Publicly, calls were given asking them to quit, asking them to leave, or else the whole community would be wiped out. So, under this threat, the threat of the gun, Pandits fled the valley to save themselves, and this became one of India's most unfortunate humanitarian tragedies. And till date, they haven't got justice. Till date, they haven't got back what they lost, right? So, this is where Pakistan succeeded in leaving behind a lasting impact on India. This was a deadly cut that Pakistan delivered. It keeps bleeding India even today, right? Pakistan's military strategy has been to bleed India through 1,000 cuts. And this has to be one of the biggest cuts Pakistan has delivered as India continues to bleed because of this. So, throughout this period, what we saw was an escalation of terror attacks directly backed by Pakistan. All these terror groups that I've mentioned, along with few other local outfits like JKLF, Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front, and other local outfits, they waged a war of terrorism. It quickly turned into terrorism as it was no longer an insurgent movement or just a separatist movement. Once the religious color was added to it, once the communal angle was added to it, and once minorities were targeted, this was blatant, mindless violence against innocent civilians. Now, remember the definition of terrorism. Terrorism is where there is a clear agenda to strike fear, right? A clear agenda to carry out mindless violence, commit brutalities, even against civilians. And any such act is an act of terrorism. It's no longer just an insurgency. It's not just another ordinary separatist movement. So from here onwards, from late 80s, from 88, 89, this became a clear terrorist movement backed by Pakistan. Is that clear? And the scale of violence and attacks would escalate in the coming years, going all the way until 2003. So hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed during this period. India lost hundreds and hundreds of soldiers and security forces, right? So the whole state of J&K was extensively destabilized because of this violent terrorist movement that Pakistan had created and nurtured. All right? So now, let us understand what has been the situation in the last 2 decades. Now that you have an idea about the scale of terrorism we witnessed from 87 to 2003, let us see what happened after 2003. And let us see what's the current situation until 2023. In 2003, there was a slight improvement in India-Pakistan relations between Prime Minister Vajpayee and Parvez Musharraf, which led to the signing of another round of ceasefire agreement. Both the countries upheld the ceasefire which they had committed to under the 1949 Karachi Agreement. Under American pressure, the US was putting a lot of pressure on India-Pakistan to reduce the violence and to stabilize the region, because the US had different interests. The Americans were more concerned about their Afghan invasion. Don't forget, by 2001, the 9/11 attacks had happened, carried out by Al Qaeda. The US had declared a war against Afghanistan and invaded the country with a NATO coalition force. So it needed Pakistan's complete attention and support to target the Taliban and the Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. So it couldn't afford Pakistan being distracted with India. And also, the Americans were concerned about the nuclear weapons that had been tested and possessed by both India and Pakistan. So, as a result, the US put a lot of pressure on India, Pakistan to negotiate and work out normalcy in the relationship. And this led to the reiteration of a ceasefire, which they had committed to under the 1949 Karachi Agreement, which means both sides will stop opening fire against each other. Especially Pakistan was the one which was breaking the ceasefire consistently to help the terrorists to cross into India. So the commitment from Pakistan to uphold the ceasefire helped in reducing infiltration. Compared to before, the scale of infiltration and terror attacks and violence definitely declined by a slight margin. I'm not saying terrorism came to an end. I'm not saying J&K became stable. I'm saying compared to 80s and 90s, 2000s was a better decade. Because in 80s and 90s, the scale of violence was massive. It was extremely brutal. Almost every other day, there would be terror attacks in Kashmir. So compared to that, after the ceasefire was upheld again, post 2003, the scale of violence actually declined from 2003 till at least 2008, 2009. There was a relative decline, not a complete decline, but relative comparative decline. The number of infiltrations, the number of attacks, they slightly went down compared to before. Is that clear? But we again saw some periods like 2008 to 2012 where there was an escalation. There was an escalation by Pakistan that led to more attacks in Kashmir. All right. Then again from 2012 to 2015, there was a slight decline, but it quickly increased from 2015 all the way till 2018. There was a sudden jump, a sudden increase that we noticed after the Modi government took over. These are patterns that we have seen. Pakistan has been using terrorism and cross-border infiltration as weapons against India. It strategically increases the scale of violence and decreases it as it wants. It clearly shows that this is not an organic movement. It's not a genuine movement. This is a movement which has been backed and created by an external hostile state, which is Pakistan. It's using terrorism in Kashmir as a weapon against India, as a geopolitical tool against India. Its goal is not even to liberate Kashmir anymore. It's about keeping Kashmir on the boil, keeping it destabilized to put India on the back foot. That has become the Pakistani strategy. So even though there have been periods of slight decline in violence and terrorism, it has picked up every now and then, causing the large-scale destabilization of Jammu and Kashmir. These terrorists have specifically targeted elections. They've targeted panchayat leaders, the sarpanchs of panchayats. They have been specifically targeted in the hotbed regions where terrorism is very rampant. They don't even allow elections to be held. They target the election officials. They threaten the people as well to prevent them from going to vote. If anyone goes out to vote, they'll be ruthlessly killed by the terrorists. Because elections, especially local elections, they represent Indian democracy. They represent the Indian constitution on the ground. So this continues even today. That's why the voting percentages have dropped drastically. Right? Voting percentage in J&K is in single digits. And this also has to do with the growing distance between the people of Kashmir and the Indian government. As India has stepped up its action against terror groups, right? There has been a growing discontent and resentment between the people and the state. And this divide has kept on increasing over the years. So a large section of the Kashmiri population, they have lost faith in the Indian state. and that is evident on the ground. Is that clear? In 2015, we saw the rise of several young terrorists, which was a new phenomenon. You might have heard of the name of Burhan Wani, a very young, educated Kashmiri youth who was radicalized largely on social media and the internet. This was the internet era. And Burhan Wani became very popular on social media. He would openly publish his activities, terror activities on social media platforms, be it Twitter, Facebook, or even WhatsApp. And he gained a large following in a very quick span of time. Several youth were inspired by him, started joining the ranks of these terror groups. And even India eventually retaliated and assassinated Burhan Wani. Indian forces, in their counter-terror operations, based on specific intelligence, they killed Burhan Wani. His killing sparked a massive wave of unrest, mob unrest in Kashmir, which created another challenge and nightmare for India. That highlighted the extent of local support that existed for terrorism in the region. And this was also a part of Pakistan's strategy as well. Pakistan has been backing civilians. It not only supports separatists and terrorists, it has been backing few local leaders, civilian leaders, to instigate mob unrest, particularly targeting the Indian army and the security forces that are deployed, such as CRPF. So what we saw was, let's say Indian army is conducting a counter-terrorist operation. All right? Based on specific intelligence, Indian army is attacking a particular hideout where terrorists are believed to be hiding. And immediately the CRPF troops will surround the vicinity to cordon it off. And the Indian army, right, especially the Rashtriya Rifles that specializes in counter-insurgency, counter-terror operations, or maybe even special forces, they'll try to conduct a raid. When this live encounter is happening, we have noticed that civilians who get to know about the attack, obviously they see what is happening, right? It's a densely populated area, be it in Srinagar, Anantnag, Baramulla. These are the major hubs of terror activities of late. So in such places, the word spreads very quickly that Indian army is conducting a live operation. And immediately the mobs are instigated by some of these civilians who are backed by Pakistan. And what they do, they assemble very quickly and they will surround the site. They'll try to disrupt the live operation, and they even resort to stone pelting against Indian soldiers. This is a tactic Pakistan has borrowed from Palestinian outfits. In West Bank and in Gaza Strip, this has been a strategy where civilians start pelting stones or disrupting live operations being conducted by Israeli special forces. It forces them to curb the mob protests, the mob violence. And in this scuffle that breaks out between forces and the civilians, there will be injuries and death on the civilian side. Right? And this unfortunate incident which happens will get publicized as large-scale human rights violations. So Pakistan's ISI has borrowed this strategy from Palestinian outfits, and it has implemented this in J&K. It uses civilian elements who are willing to work for Pakistan, and they instigate mobs to surround the operations which are going on, to surround the Indian forces, to disrupt live encounters, and even start pelting stones against them. So this pushes the CRPF and even Indian army to defend themselves, because it's a risk for everyone, even the civilians. Because there are terrorists holed up opening massive fire, right? Such distractions could disrupt the operation and many people could lose lives. So the forces will be pushed to open fire or use other mob control methods. And as a result, a lot of injuries or even deaths might happen among civilians. Indian forces, they might fire tear gas or rubber bullets or pellet guns. When this is fired at close range, right, it causes very brutal injuries and sometimes even death. Usually mob control methods, they're not lethal, they're non-lethal methods. But when fired at close range, right? Civilians might get very badly injured. Pellet guns, especially, they spray these small pellets. Each pellet which is fired will release many fragments, metal fragments, which strikes your body and punctures your body, causing very severe injuries. If it strikes your eye, you lose your vision. So there were many cases where women and young children and old people got hit and injured, and many civilians died as well during these incidents. And those pictures and videos are captured by the media, obviously, and Pakistan will quickly escalate this to the global level. It would bring these visuals to the United Nations, to Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and allege that Indian forces are committing human rights violations in Kashmir. So this also has been a tactic of Pakistan. This is about perception management. This is a psychological war. Remember, I was mentioning this under Naxalism as well. Intelligence agencies, they specialize in psychological warfare, information warfare. They try to manage perceptions, create a bad perception about the enemy and a positive image about themselves. Right? Every government will do this. Every intelligence agency will do it. In any war or conflict, psychological warfare and information warfare is a given reality. So this is Pakistan's psychological warfare against India to change perceptions about India at the global level, to project India as a violator of human rights. But in reality, these mob protests are triggered, they are planned, they're executed by the ISI by backing these civilians at the ground level who instigate some local mobs to act and pelt stones and interrupt operations where Indian forces are pushed to control the mob, leading to injuries and deaths among civilians. So I'm giving this example because it gives you an idea as to what extent Pakistan can go to create problems for India. It's not merely sponsoring terror groups. That's an old tactic. There are many other methods through which Pakistan keeps meddling with India. All right? It's not just about backing terror groups. That's a very old tactic. It's an outdated tactic as well. Along with that, these strategies, right, they have a much bigger impact. It's a combination of these strategies that the ISI has used to keep India on the back foot as far as Kashmir is concerned. So today, as of 2019 to 2023, right? By this period, India-Pak tensions had escalated due to repeated terror attacks against India. The Uri attacks, Pulwama attacks, they disrupted our ties with Pakistan completely, and tensions were very high as India had retaliated against Uri attacks and Pulwama attacks. So following this, India revoked the special status as well of Jammu and Kashmir under Article 370. And J&K was reorganized into union territories. These moves of India, these constitutional legal changes that India carried out, were opposed by Pakistan. And Pakistan has been trying to instigate more violence against India, and it has been looking for more opportunities following the revocation of special status to J&K. Understood? In the last 3 years, we have seen some very disturbing trends that have come up. There is a so-called new terror group which has established itself called the Resistance Front. There is a new group which seems to be operating in J&K called the Resistance Front. Indian intelligence agencies believe it's not a new group. It's an old group comprising of the older terrorists who are part of Lashkar, JKLF and other terror groups. They are just taking on a new name to show that it's a new terror outfit. And under the Resistance Front, along with few other terror organizations, there have been targeted killings again in Kashmir. This is a disturbing new trend. Some of the remaining Pandit families have again been targeted. In the last 2-3 years, few Kashmiri Pandits have been specifically targeted by terrorists and killed. Migrant workers from UP and Bihar, they have been targeted. Because see, with Article 370 and 35A revoked, outsiders will also have equal rights in Jammu and Kashmir. Even outsiders can buy property. Even they can vote in elections. Even they would be eligible for reservations and government benefits. Previously, these privileges were reserved for those who are domiciled in J&K. Article 35A ensured that these rights were available only to residents and domiciled individuals of J&K. It wouldn't be available to outsiders, right? So outsiders, like let's say I'm from Maharashtra, I can't go to J&K and buy property, right? This was added to protect the economic and cultural rights of the J&K people. When J&K merged with India, this was one of the commitments India had made. It was one of the promises given to Raja Hari Singh that special status will be given, special provisions will be added in the constitution to protect the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So now that the status was removed, outsiders would also have the same rights. And to express this anger, the terrorists have started targeting migrant workers as they are from outside of J&K, as they are from other states. There have been targeted killings of migrant workers from UP and Bihar. They're actually very poor workers. They carry out daily wage and labor, daily labor and other such manual labor. And they have targeted such people, such innocent people have been targeted, along with targeted killings of few pundits and their families. So this is a serious development, right? Even though scale of terrorism has gone down in the last 4 to 6 years, we are witnessing these attempts, which shows that Pakistan is trying to instigate a fresh wave of terrorism against India. Is that clear? So this is where things stand as of today. Definitely, terrorism has gone down in Kashmir compared to 80s and 90s. But every now and then, there are these incidents which keep occurring again and again. In the last few days itself, there have been major incidents in the Rajouri sector. Terrorists were hiding, and when Indian forces were patrolling the area, several senior Indian officials from the Indian Army have been killed. Right? Even a major rank officer, along with top Indian Army officials and soldiers, have been killed. And there are these incidents which keep happening every now and then. So terrorism does persist in Jammu and Kashmir. This is coming from across the border. There is some degree of local support in some districts. Is that clear? So the threat remains very alive, but compared to before, things are much, much better. Honestly, the 80s and 90s, they were the most brutal period. So compared to that, the movement is on the decline. Of course, there is support. Some acts will keep happening even now. But compared to before, things are much better because there are many other Kashmiri people who are pro-India. Don't just look at one picture, right? There might be several locals who might be backing terror groups and working with Pakistan, but there are many who are pro-India. They know they have a better future with India. So this is where India also has to learn a lesson. The government of India, it needs to reach out to the people. You can't treat everyone as an enemy or a threat. You need to reach out to the community, repair the wounds, build trust, show good faith, generate goodwill. Right? This is something you gain through hard work. So development, governance, holding elections, restoring statehood. Because see, no state in India has ever been downgraded to a union territory. J&K is the first. This is seen as a humiliation for Jammu and Kashmir. It affects the pride of the people of Kashmir. It's high time statehood is restored back to J&K. Now that the stated purpose was achieved, statehood can be restored. And Home Minister Amit Shah has mentioned that government is open to restoring statehood in the coming years. To the union territory, elections can be held because J&K has a legislative assembly like Delhi, but elections have not been held in 4 years. So local elections play a big role. It allows for political participation. It allows the people to come out and express their will, and that is a way of expressing one's choice. So there is a need to repair the wounds that have been created. There is a need to deal with the issue with more sensitivity and build trust and goodwill between the people and the state. Because there are serious accusations in Jammu and Kashmir. Under the controversial AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, it was introduced as soon as militancy broke out in J&K. As soon as the terror started in 87-88, immediately AFSPA was brought in 1989. Under AFSPA, there are many serious allegations of human rights violations in Jammu and Kashmir as well. Remember, I mentioned this with Punjab as well under Khalistan movement. So here as well, there are accusations that few rogue officers of Indian Army and other forces have committed brutal violations, including fake killings, kidnappings, torture, rape, etc. But in most of the cases, honest investigations have not happened. There were few cases where the guilty officers were held and punished, but that is not enough, right? Accountability has to be established. If some of the rogue officers are committing such acts, that brings the bad name to the entire force. See, I told you yesterday that Indian Army and in general our paramilitary forces are very professional, they're well trained. But there could be these rogue elements who misuse their powers and abuse their powers and go on to commit gross violations. If this happens in a conflict zone, it would be counterproductive. Because, first of all, in a conflict zone, there is a divide between the locals and the state. And if state representatives, like security forces, are committing these violations, it will further breed anger and hatred and resentment against the state. You will never win the support of the locals if this is happening on the ground. There are similar allegations in Northeast India as well. We'll look at that in the next chapter. That is why there is a lot of anger against AFSPA. There is a very strong demand to remove AFSPA from conflict zones. But however, the government insists that AFSPA is necessary to protect the security forces, to give them immunity. But the question of human rights violations have not been adequately addressed, and this remains a point of contention. So along with this, better development, better opportunities for J&K, and holding elections, restoring statehood, all these measures could help in building better trust between the people and the state, and it could integrate the people of J&K better with India. Is that clear? But you can't deny the fact that there exists a divide on the ground. Especially in few districts, there exists a strong divide and there is a lot of resentment that creates the local support for terrorism. So this is something we need to tackle. You can't tackle this just with security approach. Security approach is needed. Better border security, better intelligence, better counter-terror operations. They are needed on one side. On the other hand, you need to win the hearts and minds of the people, right? In any insurgency or such large-scale terrorist movement, you need to gain local support on your side. That is how you defeat the terrorists. Is that clear? This is something India has been working on, but we haven't seen much success. Several mitigating efforts have been taken up, but experts believe that it's not enough. Much more can be done with regard to providing better growth and development and delivering rights to the people of Kashmir. Is that clear? So the Indian governments have adopted a multi-pronged strategy to deal with the challenge in Kashmir. Subsequent governments, they've adopted a multi-pronged approach. There has been a political approach, a security approach, a developmental approach, and administrative approach. On the political front, dialogues have been held in the past. Is that clear? The government has reached out to the Hurriyat Conference. The Hurriyat Conference is a coalition of separatists in J&K. All the separatist groups, be it political separatist outfits or violent separatist outfits, they were all part of this coalition called the Hurriyat Conference. All right? Some were just political separatist groups demanding separatism by leading political struggle against India. Some were violent separatist groups like JKLF, Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front, which was headed by Yasin Malik. All these separatist outfits, headed by Kashmiris, they have this coalition called the Hurriyat or the Hurriyat Conference. Previous governments, under Narasimha Rao, under Vajpayee, I.K. Gujral, then Manmohan Singh, these governments have had dialogues with the Hurriyat. They would consider Hurriyat as one of the stakeholders, as they represent the separatist factions. Apart from India, Pakistan, even they were seen as a stakeholder in the conflict, along with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So holding this dialogue was giving us leverage over the separatist leaders. It would allow us to engage with them, talk to them, and even contain some situation by working with them. But right now, the Modi government has taken a different approach. Since 2014, after the Modi government came to power, talks with Hurriyat have been suspended. The Modi government does not see Hurriyat as a stakeholder in the conflict. It has rejected the Hurriyat leaders as stakeholders, and it has suspended all the talks with them. See, this again is a debatable issue. All right, it's a political decision, but it's a debatable issue. You can argue on both sides of it. Is that clear? The Modi government believes that we shouldn't be consulting with separatists. We shouldn't be giving importance to separatists. All right, but critics point out that whether you like it or not, separatists are a stakeholder in the conflict. They are the ones who triggered the conflict. If you don't talk to them, if you don't engage with them, how will you resolve the conflict? You can't win the conflict just by force. And the irony is that we use negotiations with separatists and terror groups in the northeast. The same government has negotiated with Naga insurgents who are labeled as terror groups. It has negotiated with Bodo outfits. And recently we have signed the third Bodo Accord. We are negotiating with ULFA. We are negotiating with many other northeast insurgent groups, all of which were labeled as terrorist organizations and separatist groups. So why the distinction? Why the difference? That is the criticism which comes up. Because if you don't engage with the separatists, how are you going to resolve the conflict? You can't win this war just by using force, unless you're prepared to commit gross human rights violations, right? So the political dialogue has been held, but now it has come to a halt. All right. But however, to be fair to the Modi government, dialogue has been held with the people, with representatives in Kashmir. Attempts have been made. It's not that there has been no dialogue, right? Attempts have been made to reach out politically to the people. And even previously, some commissions were set up. The Manmohan Singh government had set up a commission of experts who visited Kashmir and met all the stakeholders. They met students, they met the business and the businessmen and the investors in J&K. They met with even separatist leaders, right? They would meet with lawyers and intellectuals to consult with them, to understand their grievances so that the government can act on it. All right, the Vajpayee government had sent a ministerial delegation. A group of ministers were sent to Kashmir to consult with all the leaders and stakeholders and generate opinion on how we can solve the situation, right? So political dialogue has been a preferred tool. It does help in stabilizing the situation. But on one ground, the Modi government faces a very strong criticism. That is, the regional parties have been sidelined. Regional political parties and leaders, they have been sidelined and even their rights have been violated. When Article 370 was being revoked in 2019, the Modi government placed all the political leaders under arrest. The manner in which Article 370 was revoked has been very controversial. The whole state was almost placed in an emergency mode. Communication was suspended. Thousands of troops were deployed. Press freedom was curbed. Right to speech and expression was curbed. Right to movement was curbed. And political parties, right, they were almost completely disassembled as the leaders were placed under arrest. And even major mainstream leaders like Farooq Abdullah, Omar Abdullah, then Mufti, Mehbooba Mufti, right? All the top political leaders in J&K, they were placed under arrest for more than 1 year. Internet was suspended for more than 1 year, right? So these are undemocratic actions, and there has been criticism on this front. But the government says it was needed. These actions were needed to ensure that there is no violence because of revocation of Article 370. So this is another debatable topic, right? So there are pros and cons to it. But however, political dialogue has been used by most of the governments to engage with the people. The security approach has been to improve border security, provide for better border patrolling and border security measures. So the whole India-Pakistan border has been fenced, right? The international border from almost Gujarat till all the way till Jammu. That entire stretch is fenced and floodlit to prevent any infiltration into Rajasthan or Punjab or Gujarat. As far as Kashmir is concerned, across the LOC, across the temporary border, technology has been deployed. High-tech surveillance tools have been deployed to prevent and check infiltration. For example, satellites and drones are being used for constant 24/7 surveillance. Is that clear? Then advanced cameras, laser-based sensors, thermal sensors are being used to detect any movement and infiltration. Even motion-activated sensors are deployed. Then since the terrorists dig tunnels and enter through tunnels, scanning equipment is used. Ground scanners are used to look out for these tunnels and destroy the tunnels. So all such security measures have been taken with improved intelligence and counter-terrorist, counter-insurgency operations. The Indian Army takes the lead here. The Indian Army is deployed in this role, and the Northern Command, which is headquartered at Udhampur, plays the lead role in these counter-terror operations, especially the Rashtriya Rifles, the Para Commandos, the Para Special Forces, even National Security Guards, and other elite units are used in these counter-terror, counter-insurgency operations. The J&K Police and CRPF also play a role. They assist the Indian Army in these operations. They help in maintaining law and order, in dealing with mobs. Intelligence agencies, IB and RAW, they have stepped up their preparedness. They've tried infiltrating these terror groups to break down these terror organizations from within. Right? They have been generating actionable intelligence through which targeted operations can be carried out to eliminate the terrorists who are sneaking into India. We have tried disrupting the funding routes through which Pakistan has been financing these terror outfits. So all these measures have been taken on the security front. With regard to development and administrative efforts, especially under the Modi government, there has been accelerated development of key projects. There is greater emphasis on infrastructure creation. J&K lacks in infrastructure and connectivity. So since the Vajpayee era, followed by the Manmohan Singh government and Modi government, we are seeing a more proactive approach in creating better roads, better railway network, building tunnels that can provide all-weather connectivity. Because several roads and railway lines would get blocked during the winter due to snowfall. This was hampering connectivity and economic activities. It would hamper the movement of Indian troops as well. So better border infrastructure is being created along with emphasis on job creation, better education, healthcare, and government is trying to attract investments. Now that outsiders can also invest in property, right? The government is trying to push the private industry and the private sector to make investments in Jammu and Kashmir. IT companies, manufacturing units, even startups are being encouraged to make investments in Jammu and Kashmir. So a lot of efforts are being undertaken by the Modi government. One should give credit for the changes that have happened, at least as far as the economic and developmental changes are concerned. But only time will tell whether these efforts will succeed, whether will it help in ending this crisis forever, right? So the government has encouraged people-to-people relations as well to bring the broken families together, because partition divided the families on both sides of the line of control, right? When Pakistan illegally captured these territories in POK, many Kashmiri families got separated permanently. So we have tried in the past to set up cross-border buses that could offer connectivity through which these separated families could meet. We have tried encouraging border trade and local cross-border movement to promote people-to-people relations and economic relations. This acts as a healing touch. It acts like a healing touch to heal the wounds of the past. Because what Pakistan did with Kashmir has wounded the region and the people permanently. Imagine being separated from your loved ones. Imagine not being able to see them ever again. Right? And Pakistan takes the blame for this entirely. So when relations were better with Pakistan during some periods, India has made these attempts to help the people of Kashmir, to reach out to them, to build a better bond with them. We have genuinely made an attempt to build confidence through such initiatives, to improve border trade, cross-border connectivity, promote people-to-people relations. We even have a surrender policy for the militants. if the terrorists want to surrender and come back to the mainstream, right, there is a surrender policy in place. There are incentives offered to them to come back into the mainstream, because several youth, they might be misled, they might be indoctrinated at the wrong age, right? And if they feel that they're on the wrong path, and if they want a way back, the option should always be available, especially in areas where separatism, insurgency is being seen, right? Having a surrender policy is very, very essential to tackle the conflict in an effective manner. It's one of the ways in conflict resolution. All right, many conflict resolution experts who study conflict resolution, they agree that surrender policy is a must to give an opportunity to the extremists to come back into the mainstream. All right. So India has taken up all these measures along with skill development programs like Himayat, so that we can provide vocational training and basic skills to the youth where they can find more job opportunities. The Prime Minister's Reconstruction Plan, launched in 2004, has helped in creating better development opportunities for the state. Right? Now, of course, it's a union territory. I'm talking about the erstwhile state of J&K. So dedicated schemes and programs have been implemented. Key infrastructure projects such as the Banihal Kozhikode tunnel has been taken up. Strategic tunnels are being built. Strategic roads and railway lines have been built. Especially under the Modi government, there is an accelerated pace of infrastructure creation in Jammu and Kashmir. This helps in mobilizing our troops as well towards the Pakistani border and the Chinese border. Plus, it helps in creating more opportunities for the local Kashmiris, right? So we are trying to revive tourism. As you know, Kashmir has tremendous tourist potential, which has been unfortunately lost due to the tragedy that has happened. So reviving tourism is a priority for India. So all these efforts are being taken up on the development administrative front. So all in all, things are much better today compared to before. Honestly, 80s and 90s was the worst period. That was the peak of militancy and terrorism. Post 2003, there have been periods of increase and decline. But in the last 3-4 years, definitely you are seeing a more stabilization of the situation. Does not mean the terrorism has ended, doesn't mean Pakistan has stopped interfering. It will continue. There will be attacks every now and then, but the scale of terrorism and violence has gone down due to the changing geopolitical factors, due to India's improved preparedness in the last 20-30 years, due to our improved security measures and the changing geopolitical circumstances, right? They've all played a role in reducing the scale of terrorism in J&K. Please don't forget, Pakistan is facing a grave crisis. It's going through a political, economic, security crisis of its own. Obviously, the deep state, the army, ISI are distracted to an extent. Is that clear? It's on the brink of economic collapse. It might go bankrupt very soon. So due to these challenges, there might be a possibility where Pakistan has been just distracted. So maybe 1 year or 2 years down the line, Pakistan might bring its focus back on Kashmir and it might try to escalate the tensions for India. Is that clear? So India has to be prepared all the time. We need to step up our border management, our intelligence gathering, surveillance, and be very effective in targeted intelligence-led counter-terror operations. Along with that, focus on the people of Kashmir, win their hearts and minds, generate trust and goodwill with them, and provide development and provide justice to the people of Kashmir. Right? Because generations have lost out on the opportunities and rights. So it's high time we correct the path. But the challenge is really because of Pakistan. Or else, trust me, by now India would have rectified the situation. Pakistan's constant meddling and interference is what has created this situation right now, where Kashmir issue has become an everlasting issue. There are no easy solutions. I'm sure many of you have asked this question. Sir, what is the solution? How can we solve this? Can't we just capture POK and settle the issue forever? Things are not so simple, guys. And taking back POK is done only by going to war with Pakistan. Pakistan will not just give it to you if you want to go and take POK, right? To take POK, you have to fight a war, and no country or no government is ready for any such conflicts. It would be foolish to go to war with a nuclear armed state, that to a rogue state like Pakistan, right? So until the situation is right for a resolution, which might be many years, many decades from now, we need to maintain the situation, stabilize it, and ensure that we provide better opportunities to the people of Kashmir. Is that clear? That is why, as responsible aspirants and citizens, you should not have any biased views, right? Don't be driven by the propaganda that you see in media and through political organizations. Form your own opinions and always place humanity first, place constitutional principles first. If you're driven by these two objectives, right, which is humanity and constitutional principles, you will be on the right path, especially when dealing with sensitive topics like this, right? Don't fall for propaganda of any side, all right? For propaganda of any organization, any party, don't be driven by it. Don't be one-sided, because to every issue there is a different story. There are two sides of the story. So look at it from all the angles and develop your own view, and don't forget to be empathetic. Empathy is the most important value for a future civil servant. Is that clear? So with regard to conflicts, having empathy for people who are victims of this conflict is extremely crucial. Doesn't matter which side. Having empathy, not for terrorists. Terrorists deserve no empathy, but for the people, the civilians, the innocents, right? That is very, very critical. So I hope the topic is clear. I hope you guys have understood everything. Now let me know if you have any questions. Any doubts specific to Kashmir, please let me know. Any doubts on Khalistan movement, please let me know. After this, we'll start with the next topic. I'll be talking about the major terror attacks that we have seen across the country. I'll be discussing about urban terrorism that Pakistan has carried out against India. This is another phase of Pakistan's covert war against India. All right, just like it has sponsored terrorism in Punjab, in Jammu and Kashmir, it has waged a terror war against Indian cities, against India's civilian population in other parts of the country as well, outside of the conflict zone. So let's discuss that and cover all the major terror attacks that India has witnessed in the last 3 decades. So before we discuss these topics, let's see if there are questions and doubts. First question, Anandu is asking, sir, how reorganization of J&K has helped the Indian government in countering terror activities? See, one big advantage of reorganizing Jammu and Kashmir is that as a union territory, it comes under the direct administration of the center. Even though it has a legislative assembly of its own, like Delhi, the elections are yet to be held for the J&K legislative assembly, right? So until that happens, it's being administered by the center itself, right, through the lieutenant governor. So this allows the center to have a higher degree of control, not just over the security situation, but also over the development of Jammu and Kashmir. So this definitely helps the government to focus on both security and development, and thus tackle the threat of terrorism in a much more efficient manner. That is one advantage of reorganizing Jammu and Kashmir. Chituri is asking, why is it considered downgradation of a state if it is reorganized into union territory? Obviously, if a state is turned into a union territory, that is a downgrade. Now, let's say you're the captain of your sports team, and tomorrow you're just removed as the captain, right? Not because you offered, but you are removed as the captain of your team. But you're still part of the team. That is a downgrade, right? So state being turned into a union territory, that to being divided into 2 union territories, is definitely a downgrade. Abhijit is asking, how is the government able to justify AFSPA in front of the judiciary as it prima facie violates Article 20 and 21? That's a very good question, Abhijit. But let's address this when I take up AFSPA for a separate discussion. I'm keeping AFSPA to a later part because first I want to cover all the conflict zones. See, right now we are done with the Naxal corridor. We are done with Khalistan, Kashmir. We'll look at pan-India terrorism, and we'll look at Northeast insurgency as well. We would have covered all the major areas where AFSPA is in place. AFSPA has been used in Northeast India, in Punjab, and in Jammu and Kashmir. So once we cover the conflicts, then we will have a separate discussion for a few minutes on AFSPA. I'll explain the key provisions. We'll discuss the pros and cons. We'll look at both sides of the argument. And I will explain the stand of the Indian judiciary, what the Supreme Court has said about AFSPA, what various commissions have said about AFSPA. We will discuss this, but in a later class. So please wait until then, because when I discuss after Northeast insurgency, you'll have a more holistic view of what is AFSPA, why is AFSPA needed, or what is the problem with AFSPA. Right now, if we do that, it would become a half-hearted discussion. So let's do it after Northeast insurgency. Kamalesh is asking, sir, could the attempt of the government to bypass the Hurriyat conference and instead talking directly to the people's representatives of Kashmir be seen as a message to highlight the fact that Hurriyat's objectives are different from the local Kashmiris? Again, a very good point. This is the thinking of the Modi government as well. The Modi government says separatists are not representatives of Kashmiris. So why should we talk to separatist leaders? It's a valid point. The government is saying that we will talk to local Kashmiri people. We'll talk to civilians. We'll address their grievances. We'll look into their demands. But why should we engage the separatists? Separatists are not the representatives of the people. Is that clear? That is the argument of the Modi government. But look at the other side of the argument. Whether you accept this or not, the separatist leaders, they do hold a stake in the conflict. Now you look at Bodo insurgency, Naga insurgency. These insurgent movements couldn't have been brought down without talking to the separatists. Today, Bodo insurgency has come to an end. The third Bodo Accord was signed just 3 years back by the same government by talking to the separatist leaders. Without engaging them, without committing them to give up violence, the movement wouldn't have come to an end. So while you engage with separatists, you will of course engage with other stakeholders as well. Doesn't mean you'll not engage with the local people. But the policy of not engaging with separatists might be short-sighted according to the critics. All right, which is also a valid point. So since it's a political issue, it's up to you which stand you take. Is that clear? Either you back the government or provide a constructive criticism. There's nothing wrong with constructive criticism. All right, don't criticize for the sake of it. Constructive criticism is good. So as it is a political issue, I personally would not like to take a stand in a class. So it's up to you to frame your own opinion on this. All right, trust me, in your exam, the question will not come. It's a delicate political issue. It will not be asked in mains, but it might be asked in the interview. The interview panel might ask such challenging questions where you're forced to take a stand, where you're forced to discuss on sensitive, delicate topics. So for that, you need to prepare, right? So on any such sensitive topic, the basic guideline is that be balanced. Look at all sides of the argument, present all sides of the argument, and then take your stand. You can always take your stand, express your stand that this is my opinion, and back it up. Justify why you are taking this stand, whether you're supporting the government or not. Justify that with your convincing argument. Is that clear? But all the while, when you're making this argument on a sensitive topic, please be sensitive to the delicate issues. All right? When sensitive issues are being discussed, you have to be a little diplomatic. All right? Be it talking about terrorism, religious issues, caste-related issues. Be a little delicate and sensitive. Use the correct words. Use the correct language. Don't show any bias. Don't be biased towards one side. Present both arguments and then take your stand. You have every right to take that stand on political issues. Is that clear? But trust me, it will not be asked in your mains. Santosh is asking, sir, how to answer if any question is asked about this in the interview, like how to resolve the issue, how to tackle the local people and intelligence gathering regarding terrorists. Let's say a broad question is asked regarding how can we tackle Jammu and Kashmir issue. Let's say the panel will give you this question. In the interview, they're asking you directly. Imagine you are a IAS or IPS officer posted in J&K. What would you suggest to the leaders regarding how we can tackle the Kashmir dispute? Or just as a concerned citizen, what is your stand? What is your opinion? So what you can do is you can break it down. Give a structured answer. Don't Don't just beat around the bush. Break it down. First, talk about the security threat. Provide a couple of solutions on how we can contain terrorism. One is, of course, the security approach. Think of any other suggestion. Provide a couple of suggestions on how the security threat can be handled. What should we do about Pakistan? Right? How can we pressurize Pakistan to force Pakistan to stay away from the Kashmir separatist outfits? How can we force Pakistan to stop sponsoring terrorism against India? You can mention the international pressure, the Indian methods which have been used to cut off financing. We have used international platforms like FATF, which has pushed Pakistan to follow money laundering standards, which has helped in tackling terror financing. We have used UN to embarrass Pakistan, to call out Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism. So mention the global measures. Mention the security initiatives, the intelligence gathering mechanisms that have been used to improve our intelligence gathering, border security measures. Then talk about the development measures, right? The dialogue, political engagement with the people. So just break it down and just say that it's a complex issue. Maybe it can't be resolved immediately, but these are the steps that we can take to stabilize the situation. If things are ideal, then yes, we need a negotiated settlement. Without negotiations, you can't work out a final settlement. For that to happen, you need a responsible neighbor, but Pakistan is not being a responsible neighbor, right? So bring out all these assessments, and then you can say that it is a complex issue, but this is what I think how the Kashmir issue can be handled. Next, Salam is asking, why terrorists target migrant workers, sir? Like recently, Hamas has targeted Nepali migrant workers. What's the benefit of terrorists targeting them? See, one, terrorists target outsiders because they are outsiders. All right. In the case of Hamas killing few Nepali workers, even few Thai workers and Philippines workers have been killed. But in the case of Hamas and the attack that happened in Israel, it's not a deliberate attack on the migrants. Migrants have been caught in between. This was such a brutal attack by Hamas, which is a notorious terrorist outfit. Their agenda was to kill as many Israelis as possible, right? So in the crossfire, the migrant workers, because there are many migrant workers in Israel, there are many caretakers. A lot of nurses and paramedics are hired by various families to look after the elderly people. Even from India, a lot of nurses go to Israel. Luckily, none of the Indian caretakers have been caught. But unfortunately, few caretakers from Nepal and Thailand and Philippines, they have been killed. That's not a targeted killing. But what has happened in Kashmir, where terror groups have deliberately killed migrant workers from UP and Bihar, is a different issue altogether. Because the Kashmiri terrorists, right, they oppose the changes that have happened to Article 370 and 35A. Under Article 35A, as I told you, outsiders did not have the same rights. Only those domiciled in Kashmir, only they had few special rights like buying property, voting in elections, and other privileges from government like reservations, scholarships, etc. Now that this provision is gone, 35A does not exist anymore. Now that it is gone, outsiders also have equal rights. So the terrorists are showing their anger against the changes that have happened by targeting outside migrant workers. Is that clear? That is why they have singled out the migrant workers from UP and Bihar. They look at them as outsiders who have no rights in Kashmir. That is the approach of these terrorists. Been quite successful in isolating Pakistan, especially after the Uri attacks, right? After the Uri attacks happened in 2016, India adopted a policy called SAARC minus Pakistan. Anyway, since we have started on this point, let me cover this discussion and then we can take a short break. In 2016, when we witnessed the Uri attacks, which was carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed, right, this disrupted the friendly relations that had started to develop between India and Pakistan. Under a new Prime Minister, that is Prime Minister Modi, and under Nawaz Sharif, the then Pakistani Prime Minister, a decent and friendly relationship has started to develop. From 2014 to 2016, India-Pakistan were actually getting closer. But we saw these deliberate attacks against our military sites, military bases. Prior to Uri attacks, there was a major incident at Pathankot Air Base in Punjab. Before that, at Gurdaspur district, which is a border district in Punjab, a major army camp was attacked. All these attacks were carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed, right? The same with Uri attacks as well. The dastardly Uri attacks, which killed many Indian army soldiers, was executed by Jaish-e-Mohammed. So what we saw was a new strategy, a new tactic by Pakistan to deliberately focus on military sites, military camps of India. The reason why is because after the Mumbai attacks, Pakistan has been brought under a lot of international pressure by India. After 2008, after the Mumbai attacks of 2008, where many civilians were killed, right? India worked with friendly countries like US and European countries, right? Even they were concerned as their own nationals were killed in the 26/11 attacks. Few Americans and Europeans were also killed by the Lashkar terrorists. So finally, they acted against Pakistan. They brought some pressure on Pakistan. And this international pressure has pushed Pakistan to not attack Indian cities and India's civilian population. That's why in the last 15 years, you don't see any major attack in an Indian city or against India's civilian population. That's one of the reasons. Does not mean Pakistan has stopped attacking cities. It will try again. But at least for now, due to tremendous international pressure, it has stayed away from attacking cities and our civilian population. It has also stayed away from using Lashkar-e-Toiba. That's why you haven't seen a major attack from Lashkar-e-Toiba in the last 15 years after the Mumbai attacks. There are few exceptions here and there. We have seen few minor attacks, but not a major terror incident in any Indian city. All right. So due to this international pressure, Pakistan has been forced to switch to a different strategy to destabilize India. Now, what Pakistan is doing is that it is using Jaish-e-Mohammed to target military sites, military bases, because then we will not get the same kind of support from international community. Because civilian targets and military targets are different. There will be more sympathy for India when civilian targets are hit by a terror group. You will not get the same sympathy when military targets are hit by terrorist outfits, that too near border areas. All right. So that is why we see a series of attacks from 2014 through Jaish-e-Mohammed against military sites. The first was Gurdaspur and then Pathankot. The Gurdaspur attack and Pathankot airbase attack. Followed by this, we saw the Uri attacks, which led India to adopt a coercive diplomatic approach against Pakistan. And we sidelined Pakistan from South Asia. What we did was, we boycotted the SAARC summit, which Pakistan was about to host. Just few weeks after Uri attacks, Pakistan was about to host the SAARC summit of that year at Islamabad. India blamed Pakistan for the attack, as Jaish-e-Mohammed is sponsored by Pakistani state agencies. And we boycotted the SAARC summit, and all the other SAARC members, they supported India. From Afghanistan to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, then Nepal, Maldives, and Bhutan, all the other SAARC countries, even they blamed the Uri attacks on Pakistan. They demanded that Pakistan not back terror groups, which is destabilizing South Asia, and they all boycotted the SAARC summit with India. Now that itself shows the success of our strategy to isolate Pakistan in South Asia. Along with that, we have used UN and Financial Action Task Force to call out Pakistan for its role in terror financing and in backing terror activities. Right, through FATF, we got Pakistan grey listed. Through UN, we have brought up strong criticism against Pakistan, which is backed by many friends of India. So to answer your question, India has definitely done better through coercive diplomacy since the Mumbai attacks. All right, since the Mumbai attacks, we have been very effective in targeting Pakistan internationally, be it at regional groupings, at global organizations. We have used every opportunity to point out Pakistan's role in sponsoring terrorism. Recently, the SEO summit happened in India. India was hosting the SEO summit. India openly pointed out, because Pakistan was also there. India and Pakistan both are members of SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And we openly pointed out Pakistan's role in sponsoring terrorism. Right? So this is how we have managed to isolate Pakistan. We brought up the issue at G20 as well. Even at G20, statement has been added in the Delhi Declaration regarding terrorism and state-sponsored terrorism. That is basically pointing fingers at Pakistan. All right? So India has done quite well through its foreign policy to exert that pressure, the coercive pressure to isolate Pakistan and target Pakistan. That's why I told you Pakistan is under a lot of pressure internationally to not engage with terror outfits. Plus, internally, it's going through a crisis right now. It's facing a massive economic crisis, just like Sri Lanka. It's dependent on funds given by China, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Without their economic help, Pakistan would have collapsed by now. It's desperately waiting for a bailout package from the IMF. All right. So all these factors have brought a lot of pressure, international pressure and economic pressure. And India has had a role in all of this. Understood? Next, the next major incident we witnessed was the Pulwama attacks of 2019, which was also carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed. Now, don't forget, after the Uri attacks, India retaliated by carrying out surgical strikes. Along with coercive diplomacy, India employed its hard power, its military power, to punish Pakistan by launching a covert operation across the LOC. The Indian Army used the Para-SF, the Para Special Forces, or the Para Commandos, to conduct a covert raid across LOC to target terror launch pads, which are present along the line of control. Pakistan brings the trained terrorists closer to the LOC in POK. It will settle them in these launch pads, which are temporary camps. From here, these terrorists are pushed into India. That is when cross-border infiltration happens. So destroying the launch pads is a primary objective of India because that will help in tackling infiltration. So following the Uri attacks, India retaliated within few days, where Indian special forces, they infiltrated into POK and targeted many terror camps and eliminated several terrorists. This had already increased the tensions because Pakistan saw this as a breach of its sovereignty. And then came Pulwama attacks in 2019, where the Jaish-e-Mohammed carried out a suicide bombing, killing 40 CRPF Jawans. A CRPF convoy was targeted by a suicide bomber from Jaish-e-Mohammed. This was again another atrocious attack. Again, a military target, the two in Kashmir itself. So following Pulwama, India scaled up its coercive diplomacy. We downgraded the relations. We cut off all economic ties and again retaliated with a military strike, which was the Balkot airstrikes. The Indian Air Force was used for precision strikes at Balkot terror camps that are located deep inside Pakistan in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region, where there are multiple terror camps for Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar, Hizbul Mujahideen, Al-Qaeda and other groups. These terror camps were targeted by Indian Air Force, where almost a dozen fighter jets, the Mirage fighter jets, they breached Pakistani airspace and precisely bombed some of these terror camps, killing several terrorists. So following this, the relations broke down completely. Since 2019, the relations have not improved after that. Right? Because Pakistan saw this as an act of war, as Indian jets had breached Pakistani airspace and bombed Pakistani territory. It retaliated as well the next day by breaching Indian airspace. The Pakistani Air Force entered into Indian airspace and tried targeting few locations in India. So it led to a aerial dogfight, a clash between the two sides. And both sides, they shot down one fighter jet. We shot down a F-16, a Pakistani F-16, and they shot down a MiG-21. And unfortunately, an Indian pilot, Wing Commander Abhinandan, right, who had to eject from the MiG-21. He landed in POK and he was taken as a POW, as a prisoner of war. But due to negotiations between India and Pakistan, he was fortunately returned back the very next day back to India. So since then, tensions have remained very high and we haven't seen any improvement in the relationship. As Pakistan is under a lot of international pressure, it's distracted economically, politically, and internally. The scale of terrorism has reduced to an extent. The pandemic also has a role to play, right? The pandemic restrictions obviously has disrupted the terror activities as well. The Russia-Ukraine war, the overall economic crisis that is going on in the world has had an impact. And in the last few years, we are seeing a slight decline in terrorism against India. But does not mean Pakistan has stopped. It will revive terrorism because Pakistan's biggest weapon against India is terrorism. If it faces a bigger existential crisis, I guarantee this to you, it will try to execute a major attack against India to grab attention and to unite the country, unite Pakistan, in order to ensure that the army and ISI survive. If there is a threat to the very control of the army and the ISI, let's say the economic crisis escalates, right? People will not sit idle, they'll rebel, right? They'll ask for a change in authority in government. If there is a direct challenge to the authority of the army and the ISI, I guarantee this to you, there will be something major that Pakistan will do against India in order to create a distraction, in order to unite its people and to retain its authority. Is that clear? So this threat has not ended. It's only that we are going through a cycle right now, a phase where the violence and terrorism has slightly declined. Understood? So after India revoked these provisions, the special status under 370 and reorganized J&K, Pakistan definitely opposed it. It has said that India has unilaterally changed the status quo, and it brought up the issue at UN and criticized India for making these changes. It even raised the issue at Organization of Islamic Cooperation, right? But India has rejected all these claims of Pakistan because these are internal policies of India. The laws we pass, the constitutional amendments we are going to make, it is our prerogative. Pakistan is no one to tell us what we should do internally. Pakistan has no locus standi to interfere in our internal issues. So India has firmly rejected these allegations and these accusations. All right. So with regard to terrorism in Kashmir and in the border areas, we are definitely seeing a slight decline compared to before. Is that clear? So this is where I would like to stop. We can take a short break. Let's come back after the break and talk about urban terrorism that Pakistan has carried out against India. I'll take some examples to give you a good insight into pan-India terrorism and how is this a major challenge for India. And based on this, we'll discuss the response of India. We'll discuss the counter-terror architecture, the legal framework we have, and global efforts we have made to counter terrorism. All right. So all of this, we'll take it up after the break. Let's meet at 7 p.m. Let's come back at 7 p.m. Welcome back to the session. Now let's talk about urban terrorism that Pakistan has sponsored against India. Pakistan's covert war against India has not just been limited to our conflict zones. Once it got the opportunity, it expanded its covert war to target Indian cities and to target the civilian population of the country. See, Pakistan was essentially waiting for opportunities to open up where India's social divisions could be exploited, especially the communal divide of India. Because to expand terrorism across the country, Pakistan would need some local support. In case of Punjab and Jammu and Kashmir, it was easier for Pakistan to wage a covert war because these were conflict hit areas. There was local support which was available, and Pakistan could rely on these local elements to carry forward Pakistan's war against India. Because in Punjab, in Jammu and Kashmir, we discussed how divisions had come up, how separatist movements had started. So it was easier for Pakistan to expand and scale up the covert war in Punjab and Kashmir. But expanding it to other parts of the country, which were stable, wouldn't have been possible without local support. It would have been very difficult for Pakistan. So this opportunity opened up in the 1990s. In the early 1990s, large-scale communal polarization started happening in India. This communal polarization between the two major communities, the Hindus and Muslims, eventually led to a disastrous event, which was the demolition of Babri Masjid. The Babri Masjid demolition by Hindutva extremists triggered large-scale Hindu-Muslim riots. Communal riots broke out in the country, leading to resentment in different pockets of the country. The victims of communal violence, right, they became easy recruits for Pakistan, who would support Pakistan's covert war to start targeting Indian cities and the civilian population of the country. Because this is what Pakistan had sworn for, to bleed India through thousand cuts, to exploit every internal divide of India. It was already doing that in the conflict zones, even in the northeast region, right, and Punjab and Kashmir, where divisions existed. It had capitalized on it, and that is how it had expanded the covert war against India. But now that communal divisions were opening up across the country following these devastating riots, Pakistan got the right opportunity to focus on these communal hotspots. There are a few regions in India which have been communal hotspots due to the violence and riots between Hindus and Muslims. For example, if you look at few parts of Uttar Pradesh, if you look at the Darbhanga region in Bihar, right, then the Pune Nagpur region, right, the Ahmednagar Pune Nagpur region in Maharashtra, then coastal Karnataka and parts of coastal Kerala. These were the major communal hotspots in the country. This is where historical communal divides existed, and these divisions increased even more after the Babri Masjid demolition and Hindu-Muslim riots. So now the victims of communal violence from these hotspots could be easily brainwashed. They could be easily recruited to create local support for Pakistan-sponsored terror groups. Is that clear? So Pakistan conveniently used the Kashmir-centric groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba and others to expand this war of terror against India, and it also relied on organized criminal networks to provide logistical support for terror acts across the country. It would start relying on criminal organizations like the Dawood Ibrahim gang. Dawood Ibrahim, right, a top drug smuggler, the head of organized criminal cartel, he had fled India. He had taken shelter in Pakistan. The ISI had sheltered him. So ISI would rely on his criminal network to start smuggling weapons and explosives into India. By using his criminal network, Pakistan would easily smuggle weapons and explosives into India, which could be used for large terror attacks in India. So terror groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba, which were initially focused only on Kashmir, were now given a different role to start targeting Indian cities and India's civilian population to further increase the communal divisions. That is why we started witnessing a series of terror attacks against major Indian cities, starting from 1993. Prior to this, prior to 1992, Indian cities were free from terrorism. All right? Terrorism was limited to Punjab, Kashmir, and the Northeast region and the Naxal corridor. But with the creation of local support, with increase in communal divide, Pakistan could easily expand this war against India. And by relying on criminal networks and terror groups, it started carrying out major attacks in Indian cities. The first major act of urban terrorism was the 93 Bombay blasts. Serial blasts ripped apart our commercial capital, that's Bombay, and it further increased the communal divide, creating a support base for Pakistan to wage its covert war against India. In the case of Bombay blast, the Dawood Ibrahim gang played a critical role in smuggling the explosives, the RDX, which was used in the explosions. Right? The local support network that ISI managed to create helped in creating the logistical support and in planning and executing the terror attack. This was our first major experience with urban terrorism, where cities were being brought under attack. See, dealing with terrorism in a remote area is very different, right? Because there you don't have to worry about casualties of civilians and collateral damage. In border areas, for example, along the Punjab border, Kashmir border, in the forests of Northeast India, in such cases, the fight is mainly between security forces and the terrorists. But if the war comes to your city, crowded cities, right, you need to be extremely cautious when you're responding to these incidents, because there could be civilian damage, there could be hostages being held. So there could be collateral damage where innocent civilians will pay the price. So it becomes all the more challenging for intelligence and security agencies to deal with urban terrorism. Then we saw a series of attacks in Bombay and Delhi throughout the 1990s. In 95, 96, 98 as well. There were a few major attacks in Bombay and Delhi. And then the hijacking of IC-814 in 1999. Pakistani terrorists, they hijacked an Indian aircraft from Nepal. It was coming from Kathmandu to Delhi. These hijackers, they took the aircraft out of Indian airspace. They landed briefly at Amritsar, but the situation was mishandled by the then government, the then Vajpayee government. There was tremendous media and public pressure, and the government failed to implement the basic standard protocols in case of a hijacking incident. Ideally, the aircraft should have been disabled or runway should have been damaged so the aircraft does not take off again. Right? Keeping the hijacked aircraft within our airspace was critical to defuse the situation, maybe through a commando raid. NSG commandos could have carried out an intervention. But due to the mishandling of the situation in the initial hours, the hijackers, they took off from Amritsar and they left Indian airspace. With the hostages, they took the aircraft to Lahore briefly for refueling. That's in Pakistan. And from there, as Pakistan turned the aircraft away, it was worried that obviously the blame will come on Pakistan. So it asked the aircraft to leave. So the hijackers took the aircraft to UAE, to Dubai. They released few passengers, few women and children were released. And again, they took off with all the other hostages to Kandahar in Afghanistan. In 1999, Afghanistan was under the rule of the Taliban. We had no relations with Taliban. We had designated Taliban as a terrorist organization. And as you know, Taliban was a puppet of Pakistan's ISI, trained and nurtured and created by the ISI. So the Taliban fighters, they surrounded the hijacked aircraft at Kandahar, and we lost every chance of any kind of military intervention. Right? Even UAE would never have allowed an Indian military operation. No foreign country would tolerate foreign troops on their soil. But in Afghanistan, it was not even in the picture because Taliban would never even deal with India. It would never even allow any such thing to happen. The only option for India was to negotiate. The Vajpayee government was forced to talk to the terrorists, negotiate with them, and agree to the demands. They presented a list of terrorists who are in Indian jail to be released. And according to several reports, they demanded a huge ransom as well. A lot of money to be paid in exchange for lives of hostages. Following many rounds of negotiations between Indian negotiators and the hijackers, finally, we agreed to release 3 dreaded terrorists. And one of them was Masood Azhar. Masood Azhar was in Indian custody. He was involved in waging war against India in Kashmir. Indian forces had apprehended him and he was serving his time in jail. But India was forced to release him, and following his release, he would go on to establish Jaish-e-Mohammed. In fact, the primary purpose of the hijacking was to get the release of Masood Azhar. One of the primary hijackers, the lead hijacker, was the brother of Masood Azhar. Is that clear? So along with Masood Azhar, two other terrorists were also released, Omar Sheikh and Mushtaq Zargar. All the three terrorists we released, they went on to commit very grave acts of terrorism. And Masood Azhar especially became India's nightmare as he established Jaish-e-Mohammed with the help of ISI, and since then carried out major attacks against India. The parliament attacks in 2001, which brought India-Pakistan to the brink of war, was carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed. All the recent attacks, the Uri, Pulwama attacks, which again brought us to the brink of conflict, was carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed. So India paid a very heavy price for mishandling the hijacking incident, and it became a black mark on the record of Prime Minister Vajpayee. The parliament attacks was an audacious attempt by Pakistan to use Jaish-e-Mohammed and to trigger further tensions between the two countries. The very temple of Indian democracy was attacked. So as India put more pressure, right, we started appealing to the Western countries. We started targeting Pakistan as well because of repeated terror incidents. Now Pakistan started looking for a new strategy against India. Since India could connect Lashkar, Jaish and other groups with Pakistan, as they were all based out of Pakistan, it came out with a new strategy to create an India-based outfit, to raise an India-based terror group. Because until 2003, all the major terror groups like Lashkar, Jaish, Hizbul, they were all Pakistan-based outfits. They included few Indians, but majority of them were Pakistani terrorists, right? So it was easier for India to pinpoint the blame. We would find some evidence to link the attacks with Pakistan. So to deflect the blame, to avoid the blame from India, Pakistan raised a India-based outfit to make it look like a homegrown terror group. This group, known as Indian Mujahideen or IM, comprised of Indian citizens only. They were all Indian nationals, Indian youth who had been radicalized. The Godhra riots of 2001 had played a role in further creating communal divisions in the country. Just like the anti-Sikh riots, how it aided Khalistan movement. Similarly, Babri Masjid demolition, the Hindu-Muslim riots that happened in 92, and the Godhra riots of 2001, right? These were again shameful events in India's history. They contributed to the rising support for Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. Pakistan has exploited these communal divisions in India, right? So Indian Mujahideen would emerge as a major threat and carry out multiple attacks from 2004 to 2011. It was an India-based outfit comprising of Indians. It was founded by the Bhatkal brothers from Karnataka. In coastal Karnataka, you have a district called the Bhatkal district, which is a communal hotspot. Since many decades, there have been strong communal divisions between Hindus and Muslims. So the Bhatkal brothers, Riaz Bhatkal and his brother, they were motivated, inspired by the communal violence in their district. And to take revenge against the nation, they subscribed to this radical ideology and founded this new terror group called Indian Mujahideen. Previously, they were all members of another extremist group called SIMI. SIMI is a student-based outfit. Is that clear? Students Islamic Movement of India. It was like a social organization. But over a period of time, it turned into a terrorist organization. SIMI became a hub of all radical terrorists. So India banned SIMI and designated SIMI as a terror group. So Bhatkal brothers and other members of Indian Mujahideen, they were all members of SIMI. So as India banned SIMI and designated it as a terror group, these elements, they were already radicalized, willing to become terrorists. They moved out of SIMI and founded a new organization called Indian Mujahideen with the direct backing and support of Pakistan. This initiative of Pakistan's ISI was apparently codenamed as Karachi Project. The ISI had planned this very well, right? Under Karachi Project, its mission was to raise an India-based group comprising of Indian youth so that India can't pinpoint the blame at Pakistan. Even if we try to blame Pakistan, it will show the world that these are Indians based out of India carrying out attacks against India. Pakistan can say we have nothing to do with these outfits. It's India which has affected the youth and they are retaliating against India. Such blames can be put on India and Pakistan can avoid the responsibility. So Indian Mujahideen became a dangerous threat for India as it executed multiple urban attacks from Bangalore to Surat, then Jaipur, right? Pune, many cities were hit during this period by the Indian Mujahideen. The Bhatkal brothers, they fled India. They were sheltered in Pakistan. Even now it's believed that Riaz Bhatkal and his brother are hiding in Pakistan under ISI's protection. Understood? So Indian Mujahideen was operating in a very different way compared to other terror groups. As it comprised of Indian youth, they had to be more cautious to avoid detection and surveillance by Indian agencies. So what they did was they carefully recruited radical elements from across the country, from the communal hotspots, from Darbhanga, from Ahmednagar belt of Maharashtra, from the coastal Karnataka and coastal Kerala. From these communal pockets, they recruited the radical elements. And once radicalized, they would be taken out of India to Pakistan for further terror training. So what they did was, to avoid any suspicion, to avoid the surveillance of Indian intelligence agencies, they used the Nepal route. They would sneak into Nepal because we have an open border with Nepal. They would cross over into Nepal, and from there, the ISI would arrange their travel to Pakistan. The ISI would provide them fake passports and fake identity. Under these false names, they would fly to a West Asian country. In West Asia, in UAE, in Saudi Arabia, and in few other countries, the ISI had created a safe haven. So they would be taken there under the false identities, and Indian agencies would never suspect them, right? Because they would have sneaked out of India without any evidence. And in Nepal, they would have assumed a false identity and then they would fly out to West Asia. From there, they would be taken to Pakistan, either through the air route or sea route through Persian Gulf. And in Pakistan, their entry would never be recorded. The ISI would directly take them away and they would be taken to terror camps in POK and in other parts of the country to train these terrorists. They would be further radicalized and put on an intensive terror training course where they would learn to assemble bombs. They would learn to assemble IEDs, improvised explosive devices. They would learn combat techniques. They would learn the art of secret communication, right? They would give all the support and training and then push them back into India through the same secret route. And once the terrorists come back to India, they wouldn't immediately attack. They would lie low for a while. They would form sleeper cells or sleeper modules. This method of operation was very different compared to your regular terror groups like Lashkar, Jaish and others. Terror groups like Lashkar-e-Toiba, Hizbul Mujahideen, they usually launch attacks immediately as they infiltrate into India. All right, they don't wait. And groups like Lashkar, Jaish and Hizbul, they comprise mainly of radicalized Kashmiri youth and Pakistani terrorists. The presence of Indians is very limited in Lashkar, Jaish and other groups. It's mainly made up of Pakistani terrorists and few Kashmiri terrorists. But Indian Mujahideen was different in all these regards. It was largely made up of Indians, and after receiving their training in Pakistan, they would come back to India, resume their normal life. Most of the terrorists were college students, engineers, doctors. So we were looking at a different kind of terrorism. They would resume their normal life without raising any suspicion, and they would wait for orders. Once they get the orders from ISI and the Bhatkal brothers who are hiding in Pakistan, then they would plan and execute the attacks. So this new strategy took India by surprise. For the initial 2 years, India didn't even attribute the attack to this group called Indian Mujahideen. Rather, we weren't aware that such a group existed. As usual, we kept putting the blame on Lashkar and other groups. And then Indian Mujahideen started sending letters and emails to media outlets claiming the attack and showing that there is a new organization in India called Indian Mujahideen. So that is when India woke up to the threat. Indian intelligence agencies, they acted immediately with the help of state police organizations, and they started unraveling this entire network. Since they were operating in multiple states, right, even though they were under police radar, we never linked these elements together. because coordination between different state police was always difficult and challenging. So now, once India realized the threat, that this was a interstate organization based out of Pakistan, getting support from Pakistan, then IB and DRAW launched a major covert operation to eliminate Indian Mujahideen. And this operation of India was a very successful operation. Today, Indian Mujahideen does not exist. By 2010, 2011, we wiped out this outfit. That was the kind of action India took to eliminate Indian Mujahideen. IB and DRAW launched covert operations in India and abroad to identify these elements, to collect evidence against them, to target them, right? And we got support from Saudi Arabia and UAE. By 2009, UAE and Saudi Arabia got very close to India. They built a strategic partnership with India, especially after Mumbai attacks. The US was pushing Saudi and UAE to get closer to India and work with India on sharing intelligence. So because of the help we got from these West Asian powers, we managed to destroy the safe haven that existed in West Asia. We shared information with these countries. They acted upon it. They worked with Indian agencies. They carried out joint operations. Most of these terrorists were arrested and extradited back to India. They were secretly brought back to India. Inside India, many operations were carried out, including the infamous Batla House encounter. Many of the Indian Mujahideen terrorists were killed, eliminated. State police organizations, their respective anti-terrorist squads, they all started coordinating, sharing information with IB and DRAW, and this collective effort helped India to eliminate and wipe out this group. Nepal also gave a lot of cooperation. Nepal helped in destroying the safe havens that existed, and many top terrorists, including the top commander, Yasin Bhatkal, right? He was arrested and he remains in Indian custody today. Several others have been killed. Few others have ran off to Pakistan. They're hiding in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And as a result, we eliminated this group by 2010, 2011. So this was a successful counter-terrorist operation by India. It took sustained efforts, including diplomatic efforts. We needed help of other countries, West Asian countries and Nepal, and they played a role in helping India to eliminate this threat. Then we saw the mother of all attacks, the 26/11 Mumbai attacks, carried out by Lashkar-e-Toiba. Right? This was India's 9/11 moment. If the biggest terror attack in the world has to be 9/11 attacks, right, carried out by Al-Qaeda against the US. On similar lines, our biggest incident has to be the Mumbai attacks. This changed the course of India, just like 9/11 attacks changed the course of global geopolitics and the American approach to counterterrorism. Similarly, the latest Hamas attack against Israel is their 9/11 moment. That is Israel's 9/11 moment. It's going to change the very face of Israel-Palestine conflict. It's going to change the very face of West Asian geopolitics in the coming years. Similarly, the Mumbai attacks changed India forever. 10 Lashkar terrorists trained by the ISI and the Pakistani Navy. They were trained in maritime skills. They were trained in special force skills. Right? The Pakistani Navy, the Army, the ISI were directly involved in training these terrorists, in providing them all the equipment. And they infiltrated through the sea route. They breached India's coastal maritime defense and landed in Mumbai and went on a rampage. It was a Fidaiin attack, a suicide mission, a one-way mission to hold as many hostages as possible and kill as many people as possible. And they attacked high-value targets, five-star hotels like Taj and Oberoi, the CST railway station, the very symbol of Mumbai, right? Then a Jewish prayer house. They were hunting Jews as well. And they were looking to target foreign nationals, those who were holding foreign passports. So several people were killed in this attack with hundreds injured. And this was the most brutal attack against India. It lasted a good 2.5 days before it was neutralized by the NSG. So it exposed the weakness in India's counter-terror preparation. There was an intelligence failure, right? Even in the response of NSG, there were many challenges and problems that were noted. Our coastal security gaps were identified. So it led to wide sweeping reforms in our counterterrorism approach. All right, we are going to discuss that throughout this subject. the changes that have happened after Mumbai attacks, the legal changes, the institutional changes, the improvement in intelligence gathering, improvements in counterterrorism. We are going to study all of this in the coming topics, and these changes were triggered by the Mumbai attacks. So, in short, India has been one of the biggest victims of terrorism that is sponsored by a hostile state. Now, since Pakistan came under a lot of international pressure after Mumbai attacks, it has changed the strategy slightly. It's not using Lashkar-e-Toiba so frequently. It's not targeting Indian cities and civilians. Instead, it has used Jaish-e-Mohammed to attack defense installations, to attack military sites. And parallelly, it has tried to revive the Khalistan movement. That's why from 2010, you see a different trend in terrorism. From 2010 onwards, you see a new trend, a new pattern. Lashkar is being limited. No attacks on Indian cities or India's civilian population. All right? Instead, usage of Jaish-e-Mohammed to attack military bases like Uri, Pathankot, Pulwama, etc., to target military targets, and a proactive attempt to revive the Khalistan movement, which was dormant. Both in India and abroad, the ISI has played a direct role in reviving the Khalistan movement, and we studied this yesterday in detail. So this is a new pattern in Pakistan's covert war against India. It's a very evident pattern. If you just pay attention, if you study the events, you will realize the shift in strategy that has happened since 2010. So from this, you can understand that terrorism is ever evolving, right? The nature of the threat keeps changing, and we need to adapt to the threat, right? We need to keep adapting. We need to improve our counter-terror approach. So that is why we have to study the counter-terror architecture of India. We have to understand what measures do we have in place to counter terrorism. How is India dealing with this massive secret war that Pakistan has been waging with the help of multiple terrorist organizations? See, for India, the challenge is very severe because other countries which are also affected by terrorism, they have to deal with a maximum of 1 or 2 terror groups. But that is not the case with India. We are dealing with multiple organizations, a good 15 to 20 terror outfits, all sponsored by Pakistan. So this is where the challenge lies for India, and we need to strengthen our counter-terror architecture. So following the Mumbai attacks, which was a learning lesson for India, India has carried out some major reforms in our counter-terror response. So we are going to study these changes because you can get a mains question here. UPSC may not just ask about Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, not just about Khalistan movement and Kashmir and urban terrorism. There might be a question on India's preparedness or India's counter-terror approach. So whatever we are going to discuss in the next 1 hour will be very, very important for your mains exam. Is that clear? I'll mention some new initiatives and new changes which have happened. We'll also discuss the legal framework as well, the laws that we have against terrorism. One of the biggest reforms that was initiated was the establishment of a dedicated counter-terror investigating agency. The NIA, National Investigation Agency, was established as the premier counter-terror law enforcement and investigating agency of India. Now let me explain the significance of this. Let me just open a new slide. See, NIA was established through the NIA Act that was passed within few weeks after the Mumbai attacks. Within few weeks after Mumbai attacks, the Manmohan Singh government, to carry out a reform in our counter-terror architecture, introduced a very important law through the parliament. The NIA Act was passed, leading to the establishment of National Investigation Agency, which would become the dedicated elite counter-terror law enforcement and investigating agency of India. Now, why is this significant? What is the big deal about establishing one agency? See, this is indeed a big deal for India because before Mumbai attacks, believe it or not, we did not have a national dedicated counter-terror investigating law enforcement agency. This was a critical gap in our counter-terror preparedness. Before 2008, if terror attacks happened, guess who would investigate the case? Can someone tell me in the comments? Take a guess. Which agency or which institution would handle the investigation of terror cases before 2008? RAW, IB, CBI? Okay. CBI is partially correct. RAW and IB is definitely not the answer. It's incorrect. Why? Because RAW and IB are intelligence agencies. You're giving this as an answer because I'm sure you don't know the difference between intelligence agencies and law enforcement investigating agencies. With regard to security agencies, there are two types. All right. You have your intelligence agencies like RAW and IB. What is their role? The role of IB and RAW or any intelligence agency is to collect intelligence, meaning they collect information, to carry out surveillance, to run covert operations, secret operations. This is the role of intelligence agencies. They do not have powers to investigate. Is that clear? RAW and IB cannot investigate a case. They don't enforce any law. RAW and IB are not enforcing any law. All right? They are intelligence agencies of India responsible for intelligence gathering, running covert operations, maintaining surveillance. That is the role of an intelligence agency. They do not have the powers to investigate, which also means they cannot file a case. They can't register an FIR. They can't arrest any accused. They can't collect evidence. They cannot complete the investigation and file a charge sheet and take the case for prosecution. This is the role of a law enforcement agency or an investigating agency. Is that clear? Law enforcement investigating agencies are different from your intelligence agencies. They operate openly in the public domain. Whereas RAW and IB, intelligence agencies, they operate secretly. They operate behind the scenes. Right? RAW and IB, they don't even have a website, if you have noticed. They don't recruit openly as well, especially for senior roles. They don't recruit openly. Their operations are hidden from the public. Whereas your law enforcement investigating agencies, they operate openly. They are legal agencies set up through laws. There will be a legal backing for them. Whereas IB and RAW, they are not entirely legal. They are set up through government resolutions. They are not accountable to the parliament, to the public. They are only answerable to the government of the day. So your law enforcement or investigating agencies, they are the ones who can register a case. They are the ones who can investigate and collect evidence and then arrest the accused, right? Then finally build a charge sheet against the accused and take the case for prosecution in a court of law. That is how justice is delivered. So this is the role of a law enforcement investigating agency. So which are the examples of law enforcement agencies? Your police, your state police, right? The police agencies, right? Your city level police, your local police station. Essentially, policing is a state subject. So police organizations are law enforcement agencies. They enforce the law. They maintain the law and order. They investigate all the cases that happen. They register the FIR, investigate the case. They have the powers to arrest the accused, collect all the evidence, and build a charge sheet against the accused. And finally, they'll take the case for prosecution. Other law enforcement agencies include CBI and few others at the central level. If your police are the law enforcement investigating agencies at the state level, similarly at the center, there are few law enforcement investigating agencies like CBI, Narcotics Control Bureau, and NIA is one of them. I hope now the functions of intelligence and law enforcement agencies is clear. I hope you understood the difference. Let me repeat the point as well. Let me summarize it. Raw IB are intelligence agencies that operate secretly, right? They don't have a legal backing. They're set up through government resolutions. Their role is to collect classified information, collect intelligence. IB collects it within India domestically. RAW collects this abroad, outside of India. They conduct secret surveillance. They run covert operations if required to protect Indian interests. Is that clear? They don't have the powers to arrest, to file cases and investigate and collect evidence. They can't go to court and bring the accused. They can't do that. They can't arrest the accused as well. They don't have those legal powers. These powers lie with your law enforcement investigating agencies. They have legal backing. They're set up through a law. So at the state level, state police is a law enforcement legal investigating agency. At the national level, CBI, NIA, Narcotics Control Bureau, and others, even Enforcement Directorate is a law enforcement agency. So they can file the cases. They can arrest the accused, collect evidence, file the charge sheet at the court, and take the case for prosecution. So before the Mumbai attacks, we did not have a dedicated national level law enforcement agency for counterterrorism. So if terror attacks happened before Mumbai attacks, they would be investigated first by your state police. The concerned states had the responsibility. Is that clear? Every state police would have its own anti-terrorist cell or anti-terrorist squad. And concerned police stations where the attack happened in their jurisdiction, they would file the case and transfer the case to the ATS, which would conduct the investigation. But this was highly ineffective. Even though some states registered success, some state ATS were doing pretty well, it was very, very ineffective because your police organizations are outdated. They cannot deal with terrorism, which is global, transnational in nature, right? Today, terror attacks are planned across multiple countries. Funds might come from Italy. Weapons might come from Pakistan. The terrorists might have moved across multiple countries, right? So to get global cooperation to run such a large-scale investigation, you cannot rely on your state police organizations. State police, they're already suffering from a lot of inefficiencies. They lack the motivation, the training, the skills, the weapons, the resources, right? So state police were ineffective in dealing with terror cases. What they would do is, because of pressure, because of political and media pressure, they would try to shut the case as soon as possible. Instead of conducting genuine investigations, they would go behind some culprits, pick them up, file false charges against them, torture them as well, and get a confession from them. So this was leading to miscarriage of justice. Innocents were being branded as terrorists, while the actual terrorists were roaming freely due to the inefficiency of your police forces. So our counter-terror response was very, very weak before Mumbai attacks. Understood? In some cases, CBI would be provided the case. This was again a major problem. CBI has no specialization in counterterrorism. I don't know if you know this. CBI was established to tackle corruption in the government. When it was established initially under British rule, and even later when it was turned into CBI by the government of India, its prime role was to tackle corruption in the central government. Later, it was turned into a jack of all trades. CBI was given economic offenses when major scams happened, like Harshad Mehta scam, Abdul Karim Telgi scam. all the major financial scams were given to CBI, even though it didn't really specialize in economic offenses. Then later, high profile murders, kidnappings, where state police were not able to handle, they would simply transfer it to the CBI. Similarly, when terror attacks increased in 1990s, terror attacks were also given to CBI, like assassination of Rajiv Gandhi by LTTE. CBI was handed the case. CBI had never experienced in the field of counterterrorism, right? So what I'm trying to say is that before 2008, we had a major flaw in our counter-terror response. Though IB and RAW were doing their task as part of intelligence gathering and covert operations, with regard to law enforcement and investigation, we were very weak. State police were ineffective. They were going behind the wrong guys, punishing innocents and leading to miscarriage of justice and human right violations. They were not delivering justice, getting hold of the actual terrorists. So this was very ineffective. In some cases, it was being transferred to CBI, which was also ineffective because it had no specialization in counterterrorism. So finally, the Mumbai attack was a wake-up call for India. So the NIA Act was brought out to establish NIA as the lead counter-terror agency of India. Today, it's a national level elite counter-terrorism agency of India. All right? If IB RAW take care of the intelligence part of it, NIA takes care of the investigation part of it. So through the NIA Act, tremendous powers have been given to the NIA, and you should know about this. The NIA has exclusive jurisdiction. It can claim exclusive jurisdiction with regard to any terror incident in the country. Any terror attack, be it by a Pakistan-based outfit, be it in Kashmir, be it in Punjab by Khalistan groups, be it a Naxal attack, be it Northeast insurgents, any terror incident in the country will come under the jurisdiction of NIA. All right? It almost has exclusive jurisdiction. It has been given nationwide jurisdiction. Any terror incident in any part of the country, the NIA can step in and it can take over the case. Even if state police have started their investigation, even if state police have registered their case, NIA can step in and take over the case from state police. That is the power given to NIA. It has nationwide exclusive jurisdiction for all terror incidents in the country. Is that clear? It has been provided with special NIA courts to fast track the cases, to provide for quick justice and effective justice, and to speed up the hearings and deliver quick punishment to the terrorists. Special NIA courts have been created across the country. So these NIA courts will take up the hearings on a priority basis and they will clear the cases quickly, providing for quick justice and quick punishment. Is that clear? The NIA has been provided with all the resources necessary, from technical resources to logistics, training, and even, if required, foreign cooperation with foreign agencies. All the required resources are at its disposal. It even has access to advanced forensics. It has built up these skills and resources on its own. It's become a formidable organization in a very quick span of time. Apart from being headquartered in Delhi, it has regional offices as well, right? At the top level, it is manned by the IPS officers. At the higher positions, it's all IPS officers. And across the country, the NIA has established a formidable presence with good technical skills, forensics, and all required tools, including cyber forensics, specialization in tracking the movement of funds, right? Specialization in studying terror groups, their methods of operation around the world. So all such special skills and resources have been gained by the NIA in a very quick span of time. Recently, NIA Act was amended in 2019 the act was amended in 2019 to increase the powers of NIA. All right. Right now, its jurisdiction has expanded to foreign countries as well. NIA has the power to investigate terror attacks in foreign countries if the attack affects Indian interests. Is that clear? This provision was specifically added because of two incidents that happened in 2019. There was one terror attack in Sri Lanka, the Easter Sunday bombings, carried out by a Sri Lankan terror group called National Tawheed Jamaat, or NTJ. NTJ is a Sri Lankan terror group aligned with Islamic State, inspired by ISIS ideology. It executed a major attack, the Easter Sunday bombings, which had a connection with India. These NTJ terrorists, they were coming to India, coming to Tamil Nadu and Kerala, and Indian agencies were tracking them. RAW was keeping an eye on NTJ terrorists from Sri Lanka. We had specific information that they are planning a major attack in Sri Lanka. India had passed on the intelligence to Sri Lankan authorities, but they failed to prevent the attack from happening. So given that NTJ terrorists were having connections in India, traveling frequently to Tamil Nadu and Kerala, we had interest in this case, and this was a motivation for India to provide jurisdiction to NIA to investigate attacks in foreign soil. In the same year, there was a major attack in Afghanistan, in Kabul. A Sikh Gurudwara was attacked by Islamic State. It killed several Sikh minorities, right? And this was of interest for India because the Sikh community, their well-being is of concern for India. Plus, the Khalistan movement was being revived. Several Khalistan groups, as you know, they have a foreign presence. So to ensure that NIA has jurisdiction on all these cases and incidents, its jurisdiction has been expanded to cover foreign countries as well. But of course, it depends on approval from the foreign governments. It's not that NIA can simply step in and investigate the case. NIA can register the case. Within India, we can investigate if we want. But if we have to go to the other country, collect evidence on the ground, collaborate with their investigating agencies, we have to request their permission, their approval. All right. But within India, NIA need not get approval from states. No approval is needed from state governments and state police. That's why I told you it has exclusive jurisdiction. It can step in, take over the case from the state police as well if required. Any terror incident across the country, it has been given exclusive nationwide jurisdiction. Today, it has foreign jurisdiction as well, but foreign governments have to approve that. They have to give approval for the NIA to work with their agencies and collaborate with them. These powers are given to FBI as well by the US. It's modeled on the lines of FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. FBI is responsible for homeland security in the US, domestic security in the US. It also acts as a domestic intelligence agency. So FBI, which investigates terror cases, right, on American soil, also has foreign jurisdiction. If there are attacks in foreign countries, which is threatening American interests, FBI can seek foreign jurisdiction and investigate the case as well. So when Mumbai attacks happened in India and when American nationals were killed, right, FBI approached India, requested India for permission. India gave the approval, and FBI joined the Indian authorities in investigating the Mumbai attacks. On similar lines, NIA also has been given foreign jurisdiction today. All right. Another big change is that now NIA can investigate related cases as well, where there is a connection to drug trafficking, arms trafficking, to Atomic Energy Act. If there are any violations of Atomic Energy Act, meaning if there is a nuclear incident where there is a terror angle, right? Certain cyber crimes as well. Even certain cases of money laundering. These cases usually come under the jurisdiction of other agencies. Like money laundering is exclusively dealt with by Enforcement Directorate. It's ED's jurisdiction. Drugs and arms or any smuggling and trafficking is a jurisdiction of Narcotics Control Bureau, Directorate of Revenue Intelligence. All right. In some cases of economic offenses, CBI will have jurisdiction. ED will have jurisdiction. But if there is a terrorist connection, if there is a terror angle to any of these cases, NIA can step in and join the investigation. Is that clear? Because terrorism is connected to all these activities. There could be a case of nuclear terrorism involving nuclear material. There could be a case where terror attacks are connected with drug smuggling and arms smuggling. There could be cases where terrorism is connected with cyber crimes and cyber warfare, or it could be connected with money laundering. So in such cases, NIA can claim jurisdiction and investigate the case along with the other agencies which have original jurisdiction. So this is a major change which has been carried out. Apart from this, few other changes were also done. For example, with regard to NIA courts, the structure of NIA and powers of investigating officers, all those minor changes were also done. But these were the major updates that happened in 2019. So because of all these powers that have been given, NIA has become a very effective counter-terror law enforcement agency in the country. Understood? So any bomb blast, any terror incident in any part of the country, and in some foreign countries as well, NIA can investigate those cases and push the case for fast-track prosecution at special NIA courts. So this measure is one of the most important institutional measures and legal measures that has been taken by India after the Mumbai attacks. All right. The reason why I have explained this in slight detail is because you can expect a 10-mark question or maybe even a 15-mark question asking you to highlight the role of NIA, the role and powers of NIA. Is that clear? It's one of the major reforms we have carried out as far as counterterrorism is concerned. So please understand the difference between law enforcement and intelligence. This is very, very important. It will keep coming up in the next classes. All right. So in law enforcement as well, there are two specific roles. In law enforcement, within the domain of law enforcement, there are two roles. One is investigation, which I was mentioning till now. The other is maintaining law and order. All right. And the other specialized role is intelligence. So with regard to policing, security agencies, there are these different specific roles. You have your intelligence agencies, which conduct covert operations, collect intelligence, etc. They don't have legal powers to arrest or investigate. Then you have your law enforcement agencies that enforce a particular law. They have a legal backing. The law defines their powers, their role. And in law enforcement, there are two tasks or two different roles. One is investigation, like NIA does. CBI is an investigating agency. ED is an investigating agency. The other role is law and order, maintaining law and order in the jurisdiction, preventing crime, investigating murders, right? Preventing riots, maintaining public order. That is another role in policing. So your state police, for example, which are law enforcement agencies, they perform both the tasks. Your state police, they take up investigation as well. They maintain law and order as well. Those are policing functions. Understood? So at the state level, it's your state police that deals with law enforcement. It has the legal backing to maintain law and order, deal with any security situation on the ground, and investigate the cases and take the cases for prosecution. At the national level, there are few law enforcement agencies. They usually look after investigation only. But there are central armed police forces like CRPF, BSF, and others. They perform a law and order function as well. Clear? Then come your intelligence agencies, whose role is only to collect intelligence and run covert operations. So please understand these policing functions. This will keep coming up. All right. So that is why I'm explaining this basic concept. Next, the primary legal weapon of India against terrorism, the UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. This law was amended after the Mumbai attacks to turn this into our primary legal weapon against terrorism. Because unfortunately, we didn't have a effective law against terrorism. Now look at the irony of this. Even though India has been the biggest victim of terrorism, we didn't even have a dedicated law enforcement agency. We didn't even have a dedicated law to deal with modern day terrorism. It took the Mumbai attacks to wake up the Indian government. Subsequent governments, none of them had taken these measures. Finally, the Mumbai attacks were a wake up call, right? It made us realize we had major security flaws. It was a colossal intelligence failure, a failure of our coastal security and maritime security, a failure of our counter-terrorism efforts. So it introduced major reforms. It pushed the Manmohan Singh government to introduce all these reforms. So that is why NIA was established, and UAPA, an old law, was amended to turn this into the primary anti-terror law of India. All right. So we need to talk about the legal framework in India to deal with terrorism. This can come as another question. UPSC might ask you to discuss the laws we have against terrorism and the issues associated with them, because there is a very big controversy regarding these laws. Until date, we don't have a modern law against terrorism. Even though UAPA has been amended, right? We still don't have a new modern law against terrorism. So let's see which other laws are available and what problems are associated with it. And let's also talk about UAPA, which has also been very controversial. See, there are 4 laws that we have seen in India that have provisions to deal with terrorism or terrorism-like incidents. One is the National Security Act of 1980, the NSA, as it's popularly known as, the Terrorist and Disruptive Activities Prevention Act, or popularly known as TADA, Prevention of Terrorism Act, popularly known as POTA, basically the short forms, TADA, POTA, NSA, and finally UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. These are the 4 laws we have seen that have been brought out that deal directly with terrorism or have some provisions related to terrorism. But all the laws have been problematic. They have been highly controversial. All right. Now let's talk about the second and the third. Let's discuss that first, and then I'll come to NSA and UAPA. TADA was the first dedicated law against terrorism which was introduced in India. When Khalistan movement was at its peak in the 1980s, the Rajiv Gandhi government enacted the TADA in 1987 to provide special powers to the police forces to effectively deal with terrorism, specifically Khalistan terrorism. Is that clear? This law gave tremendous powers to the police with regard to investigation. Unprecedented powers were given to the police to tackle terrorism effectively. But the problem was the laws were so broad and the provisions were not well defined. It was designed to favor the police, and it essentially gave sweeping powers to the police to investigate. See, any law has to be balanced. Any law that's brought out, especially laws related to crime and illegal activities and terrorism, they have to strike a balance between security and your constitutional rights. Strict laws are good, but it should not lead to violation of your fundamental rights. It can't go against your constitution. Basic constitutional rights, such as right to life, provisions of Article 20, then provisions of Article 19. These basic provisions, 19, 20, 21, they cannot be violated by laws. In the name of fighting crime or terrorism or illegal activities, in the name of national security, you can't bring such draconian laws which leads to abuse of human rights and fundamental rights. There has to be a balance between the two. Yes, national security is important. You need a stringent law to tackle terrorism, but not at the cost of your fundamental rights and your constitutional principles. That balance has to be there in any law. In case of TADA, this balance was missing. The law was poorly drafted. It had very broad, vague provisions that would give sweeping powers to the police, and essentially, they would get the discretion. They got a lot of discretionary powers while interpreting the law. And this is dangerous in any law, especially with laws dealing with crime and illegal activities. The provisions were not specifically defined. There was no accountability. It seemed to favor the police. And as you can expect, TADA was widely misused to commit violations. It gave a long detention period. It provided a lot of powers regarding arrest and holding custody of the accused. These provisions led to custodial torture, where accused would be beaten up and humiliated by the police just to extract a confession from them. Confessions are never reliable. Confession that to extract it through torture is not at all reliable. So many incidents came up in the country where police organizations were blaming innocents because they were ineffective. They could never crack the case. Right? In most cases, they couldn't crack the case. They would be under political and media pressure. So just to claim closure of the case and claim that they solved the case, they would pick up some innocents, frame the cases, charges against them, beat them and torture them to get a confession out of them. Because the law allowed many such abuses to happen, it gave a lot of discretionary powers regarding detention, regarding bail. Bail became impossible, right? So because of the stringent provisions here, the police would often misuse the laws and frame innocents, torture them, commit violations against them, while allowing the terrorists to run free. The prosecution rate, the successful prosecution rate was very, very low under TADA. That itself is a measure. If the conviction rate is less, if the number of convictions they are getting through prosecution is less, it shows that majority of the cases were false to begin with. Because confessions will not stand in a court of law. Courts will throw those cases out. If they can't back it up with other evidence, with scientific and technical evidence and forensics, right? Courts will throw those cases out because it's clear that these were false charges, extracted through confessions, through tortures, which is a violation of human rights and fundamental rights. Many, many such cases came up. See, I'm not saying police forces were ineffective entirely. As I told you, in some cases, they were doing very well. Some state police especially were doing better than the others. But in general, across the country, TADA was seen to be misused. The stringent provisions were being abused by the police, committing large-scale human right violations and fundamental right violations. The conviction rates were very, very poor. And by the time the court could, rip the case apart and identify that the accused are innocent, many years would have passed, destroying the lives of innocent people. Imagine, once they are arrested, right, then tortured and pushed through the legal process, it would have taken few years, their reputation would have been damaged, their careers, their lives would have been ruined. And finally, the court declares them as innocent. Because the police never got right evidence. They had mainly got confessions by beating them, by torturing them. Or it could be the other way around as well. They might have got the right guys, but they were ineffective to provide the right evidence. They couldn't build a watertight case against them to convince the court. So many such failings were noted under TADA, and as a result, it was allowed to lapse in 1995. TADA does not exist anymore. One good thing about TADA was, the only good thing about TADA, it had a sunset clause. Some laws will have a sunset clause, basically expiry date. The law will be retired. The law will be allowed to lapse at a given date. When the law is enacted, then itself a sunset clause is added, an expiry date is given, that this law applies only till then. So under TADA, right, it was seen as a temporary measure to tackle Khalistan movement and other terrorist activities we were seeing. Its application was only till 1995. If it had to be extended it had to be extended by the parliament. All right. Because of all the controversy, the criticism, the large scale abuses and violations, the government allowed the law to lapse in 1995. So TADA does not exist anymore. TADA charges cannot be brought up right now. All right. It's the same law under which the Bombay blasts were handled. Right. Many of you would know the popular case involving actor Sanjay Dutt, where he was accused and even held guilty of possessing arms and ammunition, which was tied with the Mumbai blast. Right? It was a part of the same consignment of weapons that was sent by Pakistan. And Sanjay Dutt was charged under TADA. Is that clear? But apart from this case, in many other cases, there were violations and abuses. So due to the controversy, TADA was allowed to lapse. Clear? It does not exist anymore. Next, to replace TADA, the Vajpayee government brought another law called POTA, Prevention of Terrorism Act. This law also suffered from the same drawbacks, exactly the same drawbacks. The law was accused of being very stringent, not being balanced. There were many abuses that were noted, where police again started misusing POTA and its stringent provisions to target innocents. Or cases would be ineffectively handled, even if the actual terrorists were caught. The police were failing in their investigation, failing to get the right evidence, and they were failing to get justice. A lot of cases of torture and violations came up, misuse and abuse of the law came up, because even POTA had very broad definitions. It gave sweeping powers to the police forces with little accountability with regard to arrest, with regard to detention, seeking custody of the accused, with regard to bail. Right? In all these provisions, it was a very stringent law and gave a lot of discretion to the police. See, that is why a balanced law has to be well defined. Provisions are to be very clear. If your law is not clear, if you have very broad, vague definitions, the discretion will be left to the police. The interpretation will be left to the police. And they will always give it a wide interpretation, leading to abuse of the law. So POTA also suffered from the same consequences. Even under POTA, conviction rates were very, very low, meaning either the cases were false or the police were ineffective in proving the guilt of the accused. So POTA also became controversial, and it was repealed by the next Manmohan Singh government in 2004. It lasted only 2 years. It triggered a major controversy in the country, so POTA was repealed. It was repealed by the parliament, and it does not exist anymore. All right. So today we are left with two laws that deal with terrorism. One is National Security Act, the other is UAPA. I'll come to UAPA, but let me tell you about NSA, the National Security Act. The NSA, which was brought in 1980, it mainly has provisions to deal with so-called anti-national activities. It deals with anti-national activities which are a threat to the unity, integrity, and sovereignty of the nation. All right. So what can you understand from this? You can realize that this law was never meant to deal with modern day terrorism. It didn't contain any specific provision regarding terrorism. It gave broad definition of anti-national activities. Right? Any activity threatening the unity of the nation, integrity and sovereignty of the nation would be covered under the law. So this law, again, even though it is still in use, even this law has been widely misused by ruling parties at the center and also at the state level. Critics, journalists, activists, they have been charged under NSA provisions. Several journalists who criticize the government, who bring out the flaws of the government, they have been arrested under NSA charges. Right? Because the law is, again, a very poorly defined law. It does not deal exactly with terrorism, but the law has been used against terrorism cases by state police forces. There have been many instances of abuse and misuse, even with NSA, as critics of the government, political opponents, journalists, activists, they have been targeted. And it has led to the violation of freedom of speech and expression. All right. That is why NSA has been challenged in courts. Even here, conviction rates are very low. The ruling parties, usually at center and states, misuse these laws to target any kind of criticism and political dissent. So NSA also is not effective in dealing with terrorism, but still police forces, they were using it to deal with terrorism. So such poor laws can never help our case in dealing with terrorism. Rather, it will weaken our fight against terrorism because the actual terrorists will go free, right? And police forces, they misuse the law and target innocents just to claim credit and close the case. And they end up creating even more resentment in the country. So all the three laws have been very dangerous and ineffective for India. So TADA and POTA, they have been done away with. TADA was lapsed, POTA was repealed, but NSA still exists. And even now there is criticism and controversy about the misuse of NSA. It does not even define terrorism properly, it does not deal with modern day terrorism that we experience. It only deals with a broad term called anti-national activities, any activity threatening national security of the country, right? So such laws can't be effective in fighting terrorism. Then comes your UAPA, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, passed in 1967. It's a very old law. This law was brought out to deal with unlawful activities. Basically, activities which are against the law, activities which are a threat to the country. All right? Activities that could threaten the unity of the nation, sovereignty of the nation, integrity of the nation, and the national security of the country, and as well as friendly relations with foreign countries. Any activity that weakens the integrity of the nation, threatens our unity, sovereignty, and friendly ties with foreign governments, they are brought under this law as unlawful activities. All right? Activities against the law regarding these threats. Now, this law was brought out following the 1962 war and 1965 war. It was based on the recommendations of a committee which was looking to promote national integration, which was looking to maintain the unity of the nation, because during these wars with China and Pakistan, there were some internal challenges which was distracting the government from the external war. All right, when we were fighting China in 62, fighting Pakistan in 65, these were major external threats for the central government. So the central government was expected to focus entirely on these external threats. But due to some internal challenges, due to internal crisis and threats by various events and various groups, government's attention was getting distracted and it was threatening the integrity of the nation internally. When you're fighting an external enemy, you need the country to be united, to be integrated, right? But there were some divisive forces which were weakening the unity and integrity of the nation. So to tackle such elements and threats, this law was brought out. To promote unity and integrity of the nation, this law was enacted. Now, I think you can see the problem. It didn't deal with terrorism at all. It never dealt with terrorism specifically. It had not a single provision regarding terrorism. In 1967, we didn't even experience modern day terrorism, right? Only Naxalism had started, Northeast insurgency had started. Modern day state-sponsored terrorism didn't even exist at that point. So the law was never meant to deal with terrorism. This old law was revived by the Manmohan Singh government. All right. After POTA was repealed because of the controversy, India didn't have any law against terrorism. Only NSA was there. So UAPA, which is an old, outdated law, this was revived through amendments. It has been repeatedly amended. The UAPA has been amended multiple times: 2004, 2008, 2012, 2019. It is through these amendments the old, outdated law has been refurbished into the primary anti-terror law of India. So you can understand why the law is criticized. Even UAPA faces criticism and controversy. It does have some good provisions, I'll not deny that, but you can't take some outdated law which dealt with something else and turn that into an anti-terror law. I mean, are we as weak to not even frame a dedicated law against terrorism? Right? Even today, you don't have a dedicated law. The UAPA has been made into a law against terrorism by amending it. Don't we have enough lawmakers in the country? Don't we have a elected government which can come out with a dedicated law against terrorism that balances security needs with your basic rights? Since there was no effective law, this old law from 1967 was taken, amended again and again and again, and added these new provisions. After Mumbai attacks, it was amended to give more teeth to the law. Right after POTA was repealed, it was amended to make this the anti-terror law. In 2012, new provisions were added to meet some of our international commitments, especially with regard to terror financing. We had a commitment to FATF. To add those provisions, it was amended in 2012. The Modi government as well again amended it in 2019. So do we need these outdated laws? Should we just amend them and suit the current context? Or should we bring out a new law with a better spirit? The problem is, just by amending, you can't change the spirit of the law. The core essence of the law cannot change. Under UAPA as well, there are many broad provisions, many vaguely defined provisions. It does give discretion to the authorities, to the police and investigating agencies, and it does provide for very stringent provisions. But the concern is such a law can always be misused for the wrong reasons, right, which could lead to fundamental rights violation. Is that clear? So there is a lot of criticism against UAPA. There is a strong allegation that the ruling parties are misusing it to target critics and political opponents and dissidents. Journalists, activists, they've all been arrested under UAPA, right? So this raises questions whether the law is enough. Is the law affecting our fight against terrorism? Right? Is the law being just used to target critics and dissidents while being ineffective against terrorism? This question always comes up, and there is a strong criticism here and a controversy against UAPA as well. But as I told you, it does have some good provisions. We should give credit where it is due. Some of the provisions are very effective in tackling terrorism. One good thing is it defines terrorism. It's the only law in India to give a definition of terrorism. All right. It provides for terror financing. It covers terror financing as well. It covers any support extended to acts of terror, membership of terror organizations. All these activities are also covered. It not only deals with the act of terrorism, where the terrorists are actually carrying out the attack, it also deals with those supporting these acts, those who are sheltering terrorists, those who are supplying weapons to them, those who are hiding them or not revealing their designs and targets, those who are arranging money for them, financing their activities, or those who are members of these organizations, right? It covers all these key elements needed for counterterrorism. It also has a provision where an organization can be designated as a terrorist organization. Remember, we have been talking about this in all the classes. I told you CPI Maoist is designated as a terrorist organization under UAPA. I told you Khalistan outfits, all the Pakistan sponsored outfits, right? Northeast insurgents, they're all designated as terror groups in India under a law. It's not none other than UAPA. There is a provision which allows the Home Ministry, Ministry of Home Affairs, to proscribe or designate any terror group as a terrorist entity. All right, a group waging a terror war against India can be designated under this law. In 2019, this provision was amended to allow individuals as well to be designated as terrorists. This is a major upgrade which has happened. So it allows the MHA to even designate individual terrorists right now, not just the organization. Before the amendment, only Lashkar-e-Toiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, CPI Maoist, or Babar Khalsa International, only such groups could be designated as terror organizations. Individuals could not be designated. With the amendment in 2019, each individual terrorist can be listed as a proscribed terrorist. So we have designated Masood Azhar, the founder of Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hafiz Saeed, founder of Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jamaat-ud-Dawa, right? Many such Pakistani terrorists and top terrorists of all the other groups, they are designated under the law. You take Hardeep Singh Nijjar, right, who was assassinated in Canada. Even he has been designated recently under UAPA before he was killed. Gurpadman Singh Panun, the Khalistani terrorist leading Sikhs for Justice, even he is a designated terrorist in India. These individual designations have been carried out under UAPA. It was added through a recent amendment. So these are some good provisions that helps our fight against terrorism. It defines terrorism, covers all kinds of terror activities. All activities associated with terrorism are also covered under it. Terror financing is covered according to FATF recommendations, Financial Action Task Force recommendations. Deals with support of terrorism and membership of terror organizations, and allows the designation of terror organizations and individual terrorists as well. Is that clear? But when it comes to arrest, when it comes to building evidence against the accused, and with regard to bail, with regard to detention, right, the provisions are very, very discretionary, very broad and vague, and gives the powers to the authorities, and potentially it can be misused. The authorities get a lot of discretion under UAPA when it comes to arresting the accused and collecting evidence against them, holding them in custody, detaining them, and in denying bail to them. So this is where the controversy arises. It's alleged that the critics are alleging that UAPA is being widely misused by the government to target political dissidents. Journalists, critics, activists, many of them have been arrested under terrorism charges. Is that clear? So this is where the controversy comes up. And that's why many experts believe that it's high time we remove these old laws and bring a new law. The Modi government has done a fine job in removing the colonial laws, right? Efforts are being made to do away with Indian Penal Code, CRPC. These are colonial laws. And efforts are being made to bring new modern laws to suit the Indian context. On similar lines, these outdated anti-terror laws should be done away with. NSA, UAPA have been misused. Conviction rates are very low. Conviction rates being low is an indicator that either the cases are false to begin with, or the authorities are ineffective to close the case. So we need more effective laws, given that we are the biggest victim of terrorism, right? You need a law which balances your security interests with your constitutional rights. It can't just favor the police and security forces, just the investigating agencies. There should be a balance where your fundamental rights are also protected. Understood? So this is something we need to take away from the discussion, and you might get a question on these lines, because these are trending topics. Controversy related to NSA and UAPA, they're always in news. So it's important to understand these key points that I've just raised. We have 5 more minutes. There are 2 important points I would like to raise, and after that we can close the session for today. We are almost at the end of the chapter. Just 2 more points, and after that we'll end the session. I'll take your questions. Rest we can continue tomorrow. The other important step India has taken after Mumbai attacks is the establishment of NAT-GRID, National Intelligence Grid. I think you might have heard about it. It's usually mentioned in newspapers. NAT-GRID was launched by the Manmohan Singh government immediately after Mumbai attacks. It is essentially a database. It's not a intelligence agency. It's not a law enforcement or an investigating agency. All right, it's not like RAW, IB or CBI or NIA. It is an institution which has established a database. It's a IT project. In simple words, it's a IT project, nothing else. NAT-GRID is an institution which has been set up to maintain, establish a database, which is an integration of all existing databases in the country. For example, the database of Airports Authority of India, the existing database of all the airlines in the country which are operating in the country, database of the Bureau of Immigration, which keeps track of who's entering and leaving the country, database of all the mobile and internet service providers, database of the railways, the banks, the financial institutions, database of bus operators, hotel organizations, all the important mobile apps through which you book hotels, you book your tickets, right? All these databases which help in tracking a target, they are integrated under NAT-GRID. The idea is to provide for targeted surveillance against suspected terrorists. Because terrorists who might be coming from another country or who are operating in India, they will be leaving behind some digital evidence, right? If a terror group has to execute a major attack, there could be foreign terrorists entering India, maybe through airports or seaports. Is that clear? In the case of Mumbai attacks, there was an individual called David Coleman Headley, an American citizen working as a double agent for the CIA and the Drug Enforcement Authority of the US, but secretly working for Pakistan's ISI and Lashkar-e-Toiba as well. He was a half Pakistani. His father was a Pakistani diplomat. Mother was an American. So he looked American. He didn't look anything like a Pakistani. He had an American passport as an American citizen. So he was the perfect candidate for Lashkar and ISI to send him to India to carry out reconnaissance of the targets. For the Mumbai attacks, the targets which were chosen, right? Each and every target, the Taj Hotel, the Oberoi, the CST terminus, the Chabad House, and the place where the terrorists landed their motorboat, every single place was mapped out by this guy, David Coleman Headley. He was an American intelligence agent working for American agencies, but betraying the American agencies and secretly working as a double agent for ISI and Lashkar as well. Is that clear? So it was David Headley who entered India repeatedly, came to India multiple times on an American passport. So his image was captured at airports. His details were registered at Bureau of Immigration every time he entered the country with an American passport. Various other activities he carried out, like purchasing a mobile phone, getting a Wi-Fi connection, withdrawing money from ATMs, transferring money to others. So all the activities he did in India would have been recorded digitally in multiple databases. Now, if you have a single master database where you can track such suspects and suspicious activities, you will be able to pick out these guys and maintain surveillance on them. India missed this entirely. We missed David Headley entirely. We didn't even know about him until his identity was revealed many months after the Mumbai attacks. In a way, the Americans betrayed India. They didn't reveal all the information with us. They had only given partial warnings to India that Lashkar is planning a sea-based attack against Mumbai and five-star hotels might be targeted. This was a very vague warning given by US, which wasn't helpful for India. Even though India went on alert, we couldn't piece the information together. If they had revealed David Headley, given us access to David Headley, India could have prevented the attack. Right? That is why India was very angry with the US when we got to know about David Headley and his role, because the Americans knew much more than what they revealed to India. They allowed him to operate. They allowed him to work for Lashkar and ISI many months after the attack. They arrested him only when he was planning another attack in Europe. So this led India to establish an integrated database where all the digital databases could be brought together. The database of IT department, banks, financial institutions, hotels, airports, airlines, then the railways, right? All important e-commerce platforms where you can order stuff online, mobile and internet service providers, Bureau of Immigration, all the databases are merged into a master database through NatGrid. It's an intelligence gathering initiative. It helps in intelligence gathering and helps in targeted surveillance of suspects. But it raises the concern of violation of privacy and mass surveillance. There is no law that provides for accountability and checks and balances. A government resolution provided for its establishment. So there is a concern that NatGrid can be misused to target critics, to suppress freedom of speech and expression, to violate your right to privacy and conduct mass surveillance on Indian citizens. But government feels it's a necessary initiative. Yes, indeed, it's a necessary initiative because any intelligence agency would have such a database. But problem is you need effective laws to prevent its misuse. In India, there is no legal accountability. That is the problem. All right. So few agencies have been given access to NatGrid. Very few select agencies have access to it. Like IB and RAW have access to NatGrid data. NIA, CBI, ED, Narcotics Control Bureau. Like this, only few select central law enforcement agencies have been given access, and the government says it is a limited access. They can't access all the data. There is a process, internal process to maintain checks and balances and accountability to ensure that the data is not misused, that someone's privacy is not violated, that someone's fundamental rights are not violated. The government is saying there are checks and balances in the system. There are processes through which the data can be accessed. Only authorized officials, based on justified evidence, only they can request for more data and track a suspect to monitor their activities in the country. All right. So that is NatGrid for you. It's an intelligence gathering surveillance initiative. The last point, a proposal was made to establish NCTC, National Counterterrorism Center. This was modeled on the lines of the NCTC of the US. In the US, after 9/11 attacks, the Inquiry Commission identified that there were serious intelligence lapses by CIA and FBI. Both CIA and FBI, they knew some information about the Al-Qaeda's upcoming 9/11 attacks, but they did not share it with each other and they did not pool the information together. If they had done that, if both had shared intelligence with each other, potentially they could have prevented the 9/11 attacks. All right, the FBI knew something, the CIA knew something, but they did not see the full picture because these agencies receive a lot of intelligence inputs every day, and some of them will slip through. This was a bureaucratic issue because intelligence agencies are very secretive, very guarded about sharing their information with other government agencies. They try to protect their sources, their methods of operation. So in the US, an intelligence failure was identified by the 9/11 Inquiry Commission that intelligence sharing is not happening effectively. So that is why a proposal was made to set up NCTC, National Counterterrorism Center, where all intelligence agencies in the US come together to share counterterrorism related intelligence. All right. It's not a separate intelligence agency or a law enforcement agency. It's only a platform where all existing intelligence agencies come together and share information with each other. Any information related to counterterrorism. So CIA, FBI, National Security Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency, all these intelligence agencies dealing with counterterrorism, they're part of NCTC, where they share intelligence with each other to ensure that they don't miss a single attack. All right. In India, we had a similar experience with Mumbai attacks. In the case of 2611 attacks, RAW had some information, IB had some information, but due to lack of sharing, we didn't see the full picture. The Americans had given us partial intelligence to RAW, right? But RAW had a very partial piece of information. It couldn't foresee the attack. IB had some piece of information which couldn't help in seeing the bigger picture. Only if IB and RAW had worked together, shared information on time with each other, they might have, I'm not saying they would have, they might have seen the bigger picture. Potentially, we could have prevented the attack. Is that clear? NTRO, the National Technical Research Organization, had a very valuable piece of intelligence which was not shared on time. Is that clear? Tomorrow, I'll give you the details if you want. We'll discuss NCTC. I'll tell you what really happened in the case of Mumbai attacks. So let's keep it for tomorrow. And we have two more topics here. We will discuss our global efforts to counter terrorism. What are we doing at UN and other platforms? And I want to talk about some major terror groups around the world. I want you guys to have a basic idea about some global terrorist organizations. This is good for your common knowledge, and it could help you in your prelims as well. Or even a mains question can come where UPSC might ask you to examine the trends in global terrorism. So you can't limit yourself just to India in this subject, right? You can't limit yourself. You need to expand your knowledge. So we will discuss briefly about some global terror outfits. So these are the 2-3 topics. We'll wrap it up and then start with Northeast insurgency tomorrow. All right. So let's end the session right now. I'll take a quick look to see if questions are there.